Boom. How's everyone doing? I was not planning on streaming today, but and I'll tell you why. We all knew that this particular release, and we're talking about Murdaugh today. We knew that this was coming. We knew that that they were saying, "Hey, we've got new appeal. It's because of new evidence." Like we knew that that was something that they were planning on doing. And I thought that would be just completely boring because usually when um, oh, and people are saying I'm out of sync again. How the heck does this keep happening with, I don't know what's going on with StreamYard, but I'm going to have to figure that out at some point. But hopefully it'll clear up once we've got the thing brought up, but I don't have any way to adjust the sync on this thing. It is what it is. All right, so Murdaugh, what happened? They said we're going to be doing a press release, and we're going to have a press conference. We're going to let everyone know that we have some new evidence, and we're asking for a new trial based on new evidence. And usually, a new trial based on new evidence is a complete Hail Mary shot. Usually it's completely, usually when you see this, it's just a complete non-issue, right? It's just somebody throwing smoke into the wind. So typically it'll be like, oh yeah, we found some guy who might have heard something from over a fence from like 6 miles away, and it's never going to affect anything. I actually thought that this would be boring. So boring that I did not plan to do anything today. I was just like, we'll talk about it on Monday, and I'll probably explain why it's a BS tactic that's not going anywhere. And then I saw this one, and I saw the documents, and I read them over, and I went, holy shit. Holy shit. This one is insane. So we're going to have a talk about it because I've never seen anything like this. This is astounding. Like, just astounding. And that trial was already a bit of a fiasco. It was already a bit of a circus. And unfortunately, we might get another one. I think that there's going to be another trial. Now, I got something to drink, and I'm going with just Lucky Lager. They're not a sponsor, by the way. It's just what I've got here. And the reason why is that they are cheap beer. We're not going for the Scotch today because this one's going to give us some reason to drink. And if we're hitting the Scotch right away, we're going to A, be too drunk to finish, and B, it's going to cost too much to run this stream. So let's dive in. Yeah, this is just unreal. All right. So, filed September 5th, 2023. So just today. Motion to suspend appeal and for leave to file motion for new trial. Okay. So they're basically, they're saying we have an appeal going on, but we actually want to cancel our appeal because we think we should get a new trial without the appeal. That is exceptional. And it's not something you do lightly. I know that people don't have a whole lot of regard for Poot. Especially not for, I've been calling him Dick Poot through the whole trial. People don't have a whole lot of regard for Murdaugh's attorneys. They think he's kind of kind of a weasel, kind of whatever. And that's fine. You can think all of those things. But we're talking about what did he bring for receipts? What did he allege and what can he back up? So, Appellant Richard Alexander Murdaugh, pursuant to Rule 29B of the South Carolina Rules of Criminal Procedure, hereby moves for leave to file a motion for a new trial based on after discovered evidence, so after the trial, in the Court of General Sessions, and to suspend this appeal during the pendency of the motion, i.e., we have an appeal. We still want the appeal to be ongoing, but wait to do the appeal until you've heard this motion. And then, of course, if he gets the new trial, then the appeal becomes moot and not significant. It just doesn't matter anymore. All right. So, what is it? The next little bit here is appellant offers a copy of the motion for a new trial attached as Exhibit 1 with its own exhibits labeled Exhibit A through Exhibit L. We will go through all of those. As the memorandum in support of this motion and documents supporting facts relied upon not contained in the record on appeal, as required by Rule 240 of the South Carolina Rules of Appellate Procedure. All right. So, Exhibit 1. This is our motion for a new trial. So we're going to see what they're asking for and so forth. All right. So, Defendant Richard Alexander Murdaugh, through undersigned counsel, pursuant to Rule 29B of the South Carolina Rules of Criminal Procedure, hereby moves the court for a new trial after discovering that the clerk of the court tampered with the jury by advising them not to believe Murdaugh's testimony and other evidence presented by the defense, pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict, and even misrepresenting critical and material information to the trial judge in her campaign to remove a juror she believed to be favorable to the defense. I see people saying, can I make it a little bigger? Let me try to make it a little bigger. Okay, that's as big as we're going to get it. All right. Now, let me just talk about these allegations, because these allegations are wild. These allegations are incredible. Yeah. This is the kind of thing like somebody saying, hey, I won the lottery kind of thing, where you're like, wow. Or, so. All right. Let's keep going here. This is just, like, I am at a loss for words just with how much this is a huge thing, right? And I see somebody making a great, comparison here. Somebody was talking about, they said, compared to the DEP jurors. Remember all the noise that they threw about the DEP jurors? That they said, oh, well, they might have overheard something maybe from somebody talking. Or I covered one of the sidebars where they were like, you can't take a picture with the alpacas because the jurors might hear about that and it would be a problem. This is not the same. This is an entirely different universe of stuff. This is this is basically alleging crime on the part of the clerk of the court. Like, not accidental contamination. This is just like straight up wrongdoing. So, yeah. Each of these things would in and of itself be enough to justify, if made out, would be enough to justify a new trial. Tampered with the jury by advising them not to believe Murdaugh's testimony and other evidence presented by the defense. That should be good enough for a new trial if they can make it out. Pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict. That should be enough to get another trial, if they can make it out. And you know what? The same is true on this pressuring them to reach a quick guilty verdict. Even if you scratch out the word guilty and just a quick verdict, that would be enough to get a new trial in my view. And even misrepresenting critical and material information to the trial judge in her campaign to remove a juror she believed to be favorable to the defense. Oh my God, new trial. Like this, and this is like stuff you hear from like mob trials, right? Where there's like, oh yeah, we're leaning on the jury. Not from the clerk of the court. It is bizarre. So, specifically during trial, the Colleton County Clerk of the Court, Rebecca Hill, instructed jurors not to be misled by evidence presented in Mr. Murdaugh's defense. If I'm the defense lawyer and I hear that that happened in a trial I'm running, I am going nuclear. I am just going ape, because that is insane, right? The defense is supposed to be able to present evidence, and, you know, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. You can't put your finger on the scale by saying, oh, we're not going to believe the defense. In fact, where I am in Canada, there's a rule. It's the case of WD. And what it says is, first, you have to see if you believe the defense. And then if you believe the defense, then you acquit. But even if you don't believe the defense, you still have to ask the question of whether it could raise a reasonable doubt, even if you don't believe it. Like, is it still possible? Which means that defense, like, we put a strong presumption in favor of the defense, right? Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But she says she told the jurors not to be fooled by Mr. Murdaugh's testimony in his own defense. Ms. Hill had frequent private conversations with the jury foreperson, a court-appointed substitution for the foreperson the jury elected for itself, at the request of Ms. Hill. During the trial, Ms. Hill asked jurors for their opinions about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence. Ms. Hill invented a story about a Facebook post to remove a juror she believed might vote not guilty. Ms. Hill pressured the jurors to reach a quick verdict, telling them from the outset of their deliberations that it shouldn't take them long. Ms. Hill did these things to secure for herself a book deal and media appearances that would not happen in the event of a mistrial. Ms. Hill betrayed her oath of office for money and fame. These are the allegations they're making, and they are... Now, I don't know about the money and fame. That might be harder to make out, even if they've got enough to prove the rest, right? The money and fame, like the motivation, might be hard to prove. Because there's all sorts of motivations people can have. Like, it could be she decided he's super guilty and she just, couldn't let that go. And again, we don't know what happened at this point. We're talking about allegations here. So once these facts are proven, the law does not allow the court any discretion about how to respond. It must grant a new trial. And I'd agree with that, because I don't see a way that that the court could do anything else other than grant a new trial if these allegations are proven. Now, I've seen some people saying, I want to see her response. She's got to do a press conference. She's got to respond to this. And I'm going, oh my God, no. If I am Ms. Hill, whether or not I did any of these things, whether I did it, whether I didn't do it, I will say that my response right now is, first, to throw my cell phone into a lake and get a new pay-as-you-go that no one knows where it is, and move into the woods, not talk to anybody except my lawyer. And I'd be having lots of conversations with my lawyers going, hey, this is real bad. This is real bad. We may end up with a situation where she ends up doing jail time. Because if all of this is proven and the court finds that this is what happened, oh my God. I would be trying to, All right. Statement of facts. Mr. Murdaugh was indicted for the murder of his wife, Maggie and Paul, on July 14th, 2022. His murder trial began January 23rd, 2023. The presiding trial was the Honorable Clifton Newman. The trial ran for 6 weeks, ending with convictions on the evening of March 2nd, 2023. And I'll note that this trial was controversial. There was a lot of argument about what was admitted, what was not. Like the evidence of financial crimes was super harmful to Murdaugh. And there were some questions about like how could this happen, right? It was just it was a contentious trial. There was a lot to argue about it. Lots of people have strong feelings about whether he did it or whether he didn't do it. But here's the thing. Even if he did it, he deserved to get a fair trial, not, some process that is unbalanced. So the state rested its case in chief and the defense began its case on Friday, February 17th, 2023. Court was not held on February 20th, which was President's Day. After returning from the holiday, Ms. Hill began to enter the jury rooms often. Affidavit of juror number 630. So that's attached as Exhibit A. So I'm just going to note, we've got juror affidavits, which is insane on this, right? Like this isn't just, hey, we're spitballing about possibilities. They've got jurors who put this under oath. So, as the defense began its case, Ms. Hill told jurors, y'all are going to hear things that will throw you all off. Don't let this distract you or mislead you. And that was affidavit of Holly Miller regarding juror number 741. We'll talk about that affidavit because that affidavit's a little weird. That affidavit is a little weird, and we'll talk about that and see. Additionally, Ms. Hill and juror number 826, the new jury foreperson, on multiple occasions went to another room to have private conversations lasting 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes they would go into the jury room's single occupancy bathroom together. That's weird. There's not a lot of reasons to do that. I wonder if juror 826 is male or female, because that also raises some questions. Foreperson juror number 826 never said anything about the content of those conversations to other jurors. Ms. Hill even instructed jurors that they could not ask foreperson juror number 826 about the conversations. 2 days later, on Thursday, February 23rd, and continuing throughout the next day, Mr. Murdaugh testified in his own defense. Before he began his testimony, Ms. Hill told jurors not to be fooled by the evidence Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys presented, which at least one juror understood to mean that Mr. Murdaugh would lie when he testified. That is an incredibly improper statement. And if a lawyer said that out of turn, like there's times when you can make that statement. The prosecution, like in their closing, can say, don't be fooled by Mr. Murdaugh's evidence. But they can't say it before. Like they can't go up to the jury in private and say that. That would get you disbarred. Like if I walked into the jury room alone out of court and told the jury, the prosecutor's going to say a bunch of stuff and it's all a bunch of BS and you shouldn't listen to it, they would disbar me. Straight up. So Ms. Hill also instructed the jury to watch him closely, to look at his actions, and to look at his movements, which at least one juror understood to mean that Mr. Murdaugh was guilty. She literally should not be saying any of this. The clerk of the court does not instruct the jury. Like, they don't instruct the jury as to what they should be looking at and so forth. This is improper. This is unethical. This is absolutely wild. It's just unbelievable. And we'll talk about that because lots of people don't believe it. Immediately after Mr. Murdaugh testified, foreperson juror number 826 told the jury that Mr. Murdaugh was crying on cue. She also criticized the former foreperson, juror number 589, for handing Mr. Murdaugh a box of tissues when he was crying on the stand, because that is what the defense wants us to do. Again, you're not supposed to be talking about the case, even with your fellow jurors, until deliberation begins. Deliberation hadn't begun, so they shouldn't be having conversations like this. Oh, and I see we've got Kurt in the chat. Hey, Kurt. All right, so this is bizarre. Next day after Mr. Murdaugh's testimony, Monday, February 27th, Ms. Hill told Judge Newman about a Facebook posting she purportedly saw on the evening of Friday, February 24th, the day Mr. Murdaugh's testimony concluded, while perusing a Facebook group page called Walterboro Word of Mouth. Okay, that sounds like one of those local gossip Facebook pages. I'm just going to say nothing good happens on those. You see people keep adding me to these things, and I see them, and it's like, oh, a suspicious looking person was looking at my garbage, and didn't touch it, but was looking at it too long. Small towns, folks. They're worse for that than my neighborhood is. So I don't know what this was about, but it's a Facebook group. The post, purportedly by juror number 785's ex-husband, Tim Stone, allegedly stated that his ex-wife was saying she was on the jury and saying stuff about how her verdict was going to be. Judge Newman asked her to produce a copy of the posting. She could not produce a copy, but according to Ms. Hill, a subordinate employee in the clerk's office, Lori Weiss, discovered that the post was taken down and replaced with an apology post. I'm just going to note, if I was a clerk of the court or or just as a lawyer, if I saw a juror posting something on Facebook or something connected to like juror impropriety on Facebook, I will tell you the first thing I would be doing is making like 7 screenshots and saving them in 3 different places, like on my hard drive, on a remote hard drive, on another remote hard drive. I'd be putting it everywhere so that, I couldn't lose it. But according to Ms. Hill, a subordinate employee in the clerk's office, Lori Weiss, discovered that the post was taken down and replaced with an apology post. Folks, I posted an ugly post yesterday to which I have deleted, and I kinda, in a roundabout way, directed it towards a certain person. And I'd like to apologize to everyone who read it. That ugly for me to do that. And yes, I let Satan control me, and I broke down and started drinking. And when I was drunk, I made that post. And I'm sorry. And this comes from Rebecca Hill, Behind the Doors of Justice, at page 97, 2023, attached as Exhibit D. If you're wondering what is Rebecca Hill, Behind the Doors of Justice, that's the book she wrote and put out. So if she did all this stuff and was involved, then maybe don't write a book about it, because self-snitching, right? Your words they'll use against you, and there's all sorts of ways that they can use a book about all of this against you. Timothy Stone Facebook post, February 16, 2023, attached as Exhibit E. The apology post states that the initial post was already deleted on February 16th, so it would have been impossible for Ms. Hill to see the original post on February 24th. That is interesting, because you wouldn't wait from the 16th to the 24th to raise this. And So, Mr. Stone, juror number 785's ex-husband, avers in a sworn statement that he made no such posts. Affidavit of Tim Stone attached as Exhibit F. Now, I'm just going to note, this is her ex-husband. How much does your ex-husband normally like you? I'm thinking like a 6 on a 1 to 10,000 scale. And yet her ex-husband is standing up to go, that never happened. When your ex-husband's in your corner, that's a sign. So, Mr. Murdaugh has obtained an authentic download of the entirety of Mr. Stone's Facebook activity from January 23rd, 2023 to March 2nd, 2023, which confirms he did not post the apology. the supposed original post, if deleted, would not be recoverable at this point under Facebook retention policies, and that he in fact never posted anything to the Walterboro word of mouth Facebook page during the trial. Now, so he didn't post the apology. They can't tell if he posted the original thing because Facebook doesn't save things forever, but he didn't post the apology thing, and yeah. So, affidavit of Philip Barber, who I'm guessing is an expert. We're going to see that affidavit as well. The person who made the apology post is an unrelated person also named Tim Stone, whose Facebook profile is not juror number 785's ex-husband. You can't make this stuff up, guys. You just, these are wild allegations, and I want to get to the affidavits because I want to see all of this, but this is just crazy. So, on February 28th, Ms. Hill questioned juror number 785 about the fictitious post on Walterboro word of mouth alone in her office in the courthouse. Affidavit of juror number 785. She told juror number 785 that someone had emailed her stating that her ex-husband, Tim Stone, posted on that Facebook page that juror number 785 had been drinking with her ex-husband, and that while drunk, she expressed opinions on the guilt or innocence of Mr. Murdaugh. Juror number 785 told Ms. Hill that never happened, and that she'd not seen her ex-husband in 10 years. They sound real close, right? They sound real like peas in the pod here. Juror number 785 asked to see the post, but Ms. Hill would not show it to her. Ms. Hill directly asked juror number 785 whether she was inclined to vote guilty or not guilty. Juror number 785 said she had not made up her mind. Now, I'm just gonna, if all of these things turn out to be true, right? If all of these allegations are backed up, I'm betting that if she'd said, I'm inclined to vote guilty, she wouldn't have had any issue later. So later that day, Ms. Hill told juror number 785 that SLED and Colleton County Sheriff's Office personnel went to Mr. Stone's house, and he confirmed he made the post. This is a fabrication by Ms. Hill. Ms. Hill told juror number 785 that she would somehow reinstate a restraining order juror number 785 previously had against Mr. Stone, which is something that Ms. Hill did not have the authority to do. Yeah, the clerk of the court has zero power to implement a restraining order or anything like that. The clerk of the court is a bureaucratic position. You're not a judge. You're not anything. So, still later that day, Judge Newman examined juror number 785 regarding both the non-existent Facebook post and the tenant coworker email in camera. In camera means behind closed doors, right? This was secretly. So they have a draft transcript of the in-camera conference attached as Exhibit I. So in cameras, the public doesn't get to see it, but it's still a court process, so it still gets recorded, right? So that's why they've got a draft transcript. Juror number 785 described her interactions with Ms. Hill regarding the Facebook post. She denied making any inappropriate comments about the case to third parties and stated what she wanted to hear closing arguments before forming an opinion on Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence. Now, one thing I've seen asked is the question of, can the judge still hear this motion? And my argument would be, God, no. And the reason why is that the allegation here is that juror number 785 told the judge about those inappropriate conversations she had with Ms. Hill, and the judge didn't do anything about it. This hooks the judge in as potentially, if I was the judge, I would be just saying nope, I'm recused. I'm not admitting I did anything. I am just saying there's an allegation against me. Someone else has to hear it because there will be an appearance of impropriety if I sit on. In fact, in courts, we don't just want the we just want it to be no bias. We want no appearance of bias. So, yeah. All right. After she was dismissed, Judge Newman said, "Oh boy, I'm not too pleased about the clerk interrogating a juror as opposed to coming to me and bringing it to me." No kidding, you should not be too pleased about this. This should be something, this is like, "Oh boy, I'm not too pleased about the big grease fire in my kitchen." Like, it's not just something where you're like, whatever, I'll deal with it later. It's like, no, kitchen is on fire. Deal with that now. I'm not too pleased about this. Yeah, I'm not too pleased. So prediction, retirement. I know that there's been notes that the judge is retiring soon. I just have a prediction that the judge steps up his retirement a little faster, and everybody, all of that gets solved. All right. The next day, on March 1st, 2023, the jury visited Moselle, the site of the murders. During the visit, foreperson number 826 and Ms. Hill walked off to have yet another private conversation. And there is no reason to be having a private conversation with the jurors. I can tell you, I was at the Depp trial and I saw jurors and I knew they were jurors, right? Because I've been sitting in the trial, and I didn't go up to them to say like, "Hey, what's your favorite sports team?" or "How about the weather?" or anything. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. Because I didn't want anything, to seem improper. Because if I went and, and if Amber's team had said, "Oh yeah, this lawyer here who's commenting online, he had a conversation with a juror," they, like, Judge A would have gone nuclear and would have been like, "I want this guy in cells until he can explain himself. And then after that, anyway, just for giggles." There is no reason for Ms. Hill to be having a private conversation with the juror. So, yeah. Oh, and hey, Natalie Raid, welcome aboard. We're covering this disaster. In her book, Ms. Hill more vaguely hints at communicating her opinion on Mr. Murdaugh's guilt to the jury during the visit to the Moselle property. So again, this is her own words. And you know what is great to use against you at a trial if she ever ends up being charged for any of this? Your own words. Like, the worst thing to have is your own words used against you. So, she says, while the jurors viewed the Moselle property, we all could hear and see Alex's story was impossible. Some of us, either from the courthouse, law enforcement, or jury at Moselle, had an epiphany and shared our thoughts with our eyes. At that moment, many of us standing there knew. I knew, and they knew, that Alex was guilty. I would not put that into writing. You could try to explain this away, but the problem is as soon as you are in a position to have to start explaining things away, that's bad. That day, Judge Newman also held an in-camera conference regarding the tenant coworker email, in which he decided to revisit the Facebook post issue with Ms. Hill. Court says, "Okay, well, let me see what Becky's talking about. I wanted to revisit the Facebook post that you mentioned yesterday." And so they're identifying what this coworker tenant issue is. It's a coworker of a tenant of juror number 785 emailed the court on February 27th, stating that the tenant said her landlord was a juror and had expressed an opinion when delivering a refrigerator to the property more than a week earlier. Yeah. So Ms. Hill, right. Court, that's Becky Hill, the clerk of the court. Can you tell us about that Facebook post? Ms. Hill, yes. I think it was Friday evening, just for a brief moment, I perused Facebook, got on Walterboro word of mouth, and saw where someone had said that, well, it was the ex-husband of a juror, and he said that he noticed that his ex-wife was saying that she was on the jury and saying stuff about how her verdict was going to be, and that he was the ex-husband, but she was known for talking way too much. And then I just kept on scrolling because that was enough for me. I've gotten enough. Oh, really? You didn't take a screenshot? because I'd have taken a screenshot. Any normal human being would have taken a screenshot at that point. But no, she didn't take a screenshot. Also, now that we've apparently determined, assuming these things are backed up, and we'll get to that, that it was a different guy. How would this different guy who's unconnected be saying that he's the ex-husband of a juror? It makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. The court says, and how did you determine who he was talking about? Ms. Hill says, when I heard there was an email on Monday, I figured the two went together if it was true. Court says, well, she's confirmed she has an ex-husband who she has 3 restraining orders out against. So she has 3 restraining orders against this guy, and he's filling out affidavits in her defense. I didn't buy enough beer. So Ms. Hill says, right. And then we looked on Monday after you told me to try to go back and look for it, and we couldn't find it. But then we found out his name, and we found the post and printed it out where he said that he'd put something up, but that he deleted at the time, that he puts stuff out there that wasn't nice. Court said, he said he got drunk afterwards. Mr. Metters, something about the devil. Mr. Harpootlian says, didn't he say he was Satan in it? Ms. Hill says, Satan was in it. Yes. In all the details, yes. Court says, all right. Ms. Hill says, made me do it. Court says, okay, I just wanted to have that on the record. You're reading a Facebook post by the ex-husband who said it. Of course, you haven't talked with him, so you don't know where he got his information from. Ms. Hill says, I don't. I can find it, though. But Ms. Hill never saw any such Facebook post. She made it up. Further, she knew the apology post was not posted by juror number 785's ex-husband. Juror number 785 showed Ms. Hill a picture of her ex-husband, which is not the Facebook profile picture of the other Mr. Stone's post about Satan. And you'd think she would have mentioned that when she was talking to the judge and the lawyers and all of them, right? You'd think that would have come up, that she presented a defense. The next day, March 2nd, 2023, the day of the verdict, juror number 785 received a call from her ex-husband that she did not answer. The call upset her because Ms. Hill's lies had led her to believe he was posting on Facebook about her and might be stalking her because she's got 3 restraining orders out against this guy. Juror number 785 asked to speak with Ms. Hill. She told Ms. Hill she was scared. Ms. Hill told her that the Murdaughs probably got to him, meaning her ex-husband. Holy, are you kidding me? Why didn't they put this way up higher? Ms. Hill told her that the Murdaughs got to her ex-husband, and now he's calling her to, oh my God. Insane. Hey, the accused is probably involved in a conspiracy against you, juror. Wow. Ms. Hill once again asked her opinion regarding Mr. Murdaugh's guilt. Juror number 785 told her that Creighton Waters' closing was good, but that she still had questions. Ms. Hill asked what questions, which is, again, inappropriate because there is no question that this juror has that Ms. Hill should be answering that isn't like, where's the toilet? Or where's the water fountain? Or like that kind of stuff. So Ms. Hill asked what questions, and juror number 785 replied that she was concerned that no murder weapon was found. They should not be having this conversation. Ms. Hill then asked, well, what makes you think he's guilty? Juror number 785 said Paul's video at the dog kennels. Ms. Hill then told juror number 785 that everything Mr. Murdaugh has said has been lies, and that I should forget about the guns. They'll never be seen again. Insanely inappropriate. Like, insane. There's all of these allegations here that, like, each individual allegation would probably be good enough to get a new trial. And combined, it's like, oh my God. Now, I mean, we don't know. Maybe this is all made up, but there's going to be some affidavits with stuff under oath. So, yeah. Ms. Hill then asked juror number 785 about the views of the rest of the jury, telling her that if the foreperson would just go in and ask for raising hands, this would be over and done with. And everybody needs to be on the same page. She cannot tell the jury how to deliberate. Like, the jury gets to decide when they're doing a, raising hands. They get to decide when they're doing a shouting fest. They get to decide when they're sitting there and arguing. They get to decide all of this. That is part of the job of the jury and an essential part of the job of the jury. Juror number 785 went to the jury room and 10 minutes later was excused from the jury. In open court immediately after her excusal, juror number 785 asked Judge Newman if he had spoken with the clerk of the court, referring to the conversation earlier that morning with Ms. Hill. And they note, video of trial proceedings available at YouTube, channel ABC News 4. I love how YouTube is now the link of choice. Judge Newman responded that I have not spoken with her today and that this is totally independent of any conversation regarding her ex-husband, apparently misunderstanding her question to refer to the issue of the Facebook post. When the jury began deliberations that evening, Ms. Hill told them that this shouldn't take us long and that if they deliberated past 11 p.m., they would be taken directly to a hotel, even though none were prepared to stay overnight, i.e., putting consequences on the jury if they take a time to deliberate. You can't do that. Just like you get mistrials for this kind of thing on its own. Now, here is where things get even more messed up because they're already really messed up, but we're going to get more messed up. Have a beer. It helps. Additionally, smokers on the jury asked to be allowed to take smoke breaks as they'd previously been allowed to do during the 6-week trial. But Ms. Hill told them they could not smoke until deliberations were complete. There were 6 smokers on the jury. I gotta say, smokers need their smoke breaks. It's just like, it's an addiction. You've got to deal with it. And I used to teach LSAT preparation. And I can tell you the smokers had a hard time in the LSAT because it's a multi-hour test and you don't get that many breaks. So when you're sitting there like, oh well, we've got to have this, people function a lot less well. I'm also going to note that in times like, we think of smoking as kind of not a real addiction, right? It's just like, oh, anybody can smoke, like it's not a big deal. But things get really interesting when people can't access cigarettes. In prisons, people kill each other over cigarettes. And in wartime, when people have been unable to access cigarettes, people will do surprising things for it. People will break into places and when I say break into places, I mean like break into military bases to steal supplies of cigarettes from the soldiers because they're that desperate that they're going to break in to like where the trained killers are and steal their cigarettes. That is, that's a bold move, right? You get people who do sex work for cigarettes in wartime. So, this is a big deal. Ms. Hill told jurors that after the trial, they would be famous and predicted that the media would request interviews with them. Ms. Hill even handed out reporters' business cards to jurors during the trial. Holy crap, inappropriate. And I know I've said inappropriate a lot of times during this, but what the hell? You should not be telling jurors to be thinking about media fame and attention. Oh my God. So juror number 758 took this to heart and made an appearance on Good Morning America the night of the verdict, which is why on the day the jury began deliberations, he wore a suit coat for the first time during the trial. So he shows up wearing a suit coat that he's never worn before so that he can appear on Good Morning America in a suit. Do you think, folks, that certain verdicts might be more marketable on Good Morning America than other verdicts? Like, say, you might not want to have a mistrial, for that, or you might not want to have a hung jury. You might not want to have an acquittal, because if you're it's always easier to explain an acquittal on the news. Yeah. After the verdict and immediately before sentencing, Ms. Hill pressured the jury to speak as a group to reporters from a network news show. She traveled with jurors to New York City when they appeared on the Today Show. She got her book deal. Her book, Behind the Doors of Justice, was released on August 1st, 2023. Now, I'm just going to note, I don't know that this is a book deal, because what I've heard is that this book was self-published. And I wouldn't call self-publishing a book deal. I can self-publish something right now. There are sites right now that I could just upload and self-publish whatever, including like scans of my toilet paper. I could self-publish that, make a coffee table book. Nobody would buy it, but you could do it. So, I don't know that I would call this a book deal. I think that they're vulnerable, at least on this point. And people don't make that book. So a last point about Ms. Hill's efforts to promote her book shows her dishonest efforts to profit from the trial continued well after the verdict. A film crew negotiated a contract with the Colleton County Sheriff's Department to use courthouse bailiffs to provide security while they filmed a documentary at the Colleton County Courthouse when it was closed for Confederate Memorial Day on May 10th, 2023. The film crew had previously recorded an interview with Ms. Hill. And the thing is I don't know why anybody would want to talk to Ms. Hill. Like, if she's the clerk of the court. The clerk of the court is usually not going to have super interesting, like, they're not normally a big participant. Ms. Hill sent a memorandum to the film crew purporting to be an addendum to the contract. Memorandum from Rebecca Hill, May 9th, attached as Exhibit K. We're going to get to go over that too. In it, she demanded that the film crew pay Colleton County a fee of $1,000 per day for use of the courthouse facilities, and made a nonsensical statement about not having authority outside South Carolina that reflects a failure to understand the choice of law clause in the contract. Then she brazenly added a handwritten demand. Also, in exchange for the use of the likeness of Rebecca Hill in an interview, a minimum of unclear 5-second video and audio clips will accompany the usage on the first reference. The book cover for the book Behind the Doors of Justice, The Murdaugh Murders, will be shown, and audio will include Becky's introduction as clerk of the court for Colleton County and author of the book. She tried to add on to the contract that they have to advertise her personal book. Now, this is a whole new allegation. Because this allegation is straight up corruption. If this is made out, then what she's doing is she's basically selling stuff that isn't hers, i.e. the courthouse, the bailiffs, all of that. That's not hers. Like, she doesn't own that. And then she's trying to sell that for her own personal gain. Straight up corruption right there. Straight up corruption. All right. The film crew ignored her addendum as the contract had already been executed. But like her jury tampering during trial, it was an attempt to violate South Carolina Code Numbers, which provides no public official, public member, or public employee may knowingly use his official office, membership, or employment to obtain an economic interest for himself. So if this allegation is made out, crime. Now, the real interesting thing on all of this is that there is a possibility, like we got a potential outcome here. Let's play with potential outcomes. Murdaugh, if all of this is made out, should get his new trial. And he might win at his new trial. And Ms. Hill might lose at her trial. There's a possibility that she ends up getting more jail time out of this trial than he does. Cheers. All right. And I see people saying that that EDB is flying today. Of course she is. Of course she is. That's why this is happening. All right. Legal standard. So now they're talking about the law here, right? We're going to do some legal tests, and then we're going to get to some evidence. So, a defendant in a criminal prosecution is constitutionally guaranteed a fair trial by an impartial jury, and in order to fully safeguard this protection, it is required that the jury render its verdict free from outside influence, i.e., you can't go tampering with the jury. When the defendant presents a credible allegation of communications or contact between a third party and a juror concerning the matter pending before the jury, the defendant has an entitlement to an evidentiary hearing. Entitlement is a key word. He gets one. Now, I'm going to say right now at this point, he's making allegations. And we're going to have to look at the evidence, right? Because he's got evidence that attaches to this, but we don't just want to take their word for it, especially not Dick Poot, right? We don't want to just take Dick Poot's word for it because we don't necessarily like Dick Poot. So let's see. This court has long held that the remedy for allegations of juror partiality is a hearing in which the defendant has the opportunity to prove actual bias. Now, here's the fun thing. Who do you think is going to be called at the at one of these hearings? Well, amongst other people, Becky Hill. Becky Hill will be, they're going to put her up on the stand. They're going to ask her all sorts of questions. If the defendant proves the alleged contacts occurred, the prosecution bears the burden to show they were harmless. And so what they mean by harmless is, this rule here says that there shouldn't be any contact, but there's a presumption that if there is contact, that contact is in fact tampering, that contact does harm things. And the prosecution then can rebut that presumption. They can bring evidence to say no. And the reason why is because if it turns out it was just harmless contact, like her and this juror went into the bathroom to have a chat, and it turns out it's because they really like crocheting, and all they talked about was crocheting. Then if that's the case, then okay. But that's not really what we have in the evidence here. So, in a criminal case, any private communication, contact, or tampering, directly or indirectly, with a juror during a trial about the matter pending before the jury is, for obvious reasons, deemed presumptively prejudicial, i.e., presumptively harms a fair trial, if not made in the pursuance of known rules of the court and the instructions and directions of the court made during the trial with full knowledge of the parties. So an example of this would be something like the jury sends out a question, the judge and the lawyers figure out what the answer to that question is going to be, and then it gets sent back to the jurors in a note that's delivered by the clerk of the court. Sure, that was a communication that happened outside of the courtroom, but everybody knows what it is, and it's the court's instructions. That's fine. But they say this presumption is not conclusive, but the burden rests heavily upon the government to establish, after notice to and hearing of the defendant, that such contact with the juror was harmless to the defendant. Now, I'm just going to say, they say that it's a heavy burden on the government. If I was the government and this turned out to be true, like you put Becky Hill on the stand, she says, yeah, these conversations happened. If that happens and I'm the prosecution, I'm not arguing this. I am just saying we agree a new trial has to happen. I don't see how you could argue that this was harmless. Like, yeah. So the presumption is even stronger where the contact was made by a court official. Where there was the private communication of the court official to members of the jury, an occurrence which cannot be tolerated if the sanctity of the jury system is to be maintained, a new trial must be granted unless it clearly appears that the subject matter of the communication was harmless and could not have affected the verdict. This is basically a recognition that not only do court officials have to be held to a higher standard, but also that court officials their words are going to be taken more seriously. Like if I, as random, weird, long-haired pseudo hippie, walks into the jury room and I'm like, you need to not believe anything that that Murdaugh says. The jury's going to be like, who is this weird long hair? Why the hell is there an elf in our jury room? And they're not going to really put much weight on it. They're going to be like, okay, we've evicted this, weird homeless person and off, we're going to get back to business. But when the clerk of the court does this, then that is that carries more weight. The clerk of the court is not going to be dismissed as like, oh, this random weirdo. It's the clerk of the court. So it's much more likely to be a contamination on that. Argument. I thought we were already at argument because, quite frankly, I'm convinced at this point that if the evidence backs up what they say, they should win. But a state official, Rebecca, this is another point, especially denying smoke breaks. Like if I, as random wandering elf, walks into the jury room and I'm like, none of you are allowed to smoke until you come to a verdict. They're going to be like, eat me. Whereas if the clerk of the court says none of you are allowed to smoke until you have come to a verdict, they might take that more seriously. So argument. A state official, Rebecca Hill, the elected clerk of the court, I don't know why they elect clerks of the court, that is weird, had extensive private communications with members of the jury during trial. The U.S. elects all sorts of positions that I'm just like, really? Okay. Then again, Canada appoints all sorts of positions that maybe should be elected. So it's a wash. So this allegation is supported by sworn affidavits of jurors and a witness to juror interviews, testimony at in-camera proceedings, and other evidence, including Ms. Hill's own book. Oh my God. If I was, representing somebody who wrote a book about all of this, I'd be going, are you kidding me? The evidence against you is a book you wrote. Because you know how much how difficult it is to write a book, an entire book? That's a lot of work. I have never worked at, putting that much work into sending yourself to jail is impressive. Like, a lot of people just manage to send themselves to jail with like a casual conversation or like being caught on a security camera or something. That's work. That's like, I put 10,000 hours into going to jail. Good on you. So the footnote there says the trial court is directed to consider whether, one, the contact was made in an effort to influence the juror by or on behalf of a party in whose favor the verdict was rendered, or the contact was such that as would obviously influence the juror, or the trial judge finds the contact either influenced or probably influenced the juror. You know what is a good way to find that contact was influencing a juror? You tell them how you want them to vote. So this court must therefore hold a Remmer evidentiary hearing. If the allegations are proven at the evidentiary hearing, then under binding appellate precedent, i.e. court, you do not have an option. The court must grant a new trial unless it clearly appears that the subject matter of the communication was harmless and could not have affected the verdict. And somebody says, time to hire Bruce Rivers. I don't think Bruce Rivers, like if all of this is backed up by evidence, Bruce Rivers isn't going to save her. You could hire Jesus and it still wouldn't be good enough. So, although I don't think Jesus was really well known for his appellate work or his criminal trial advocacy, he had other talents. So maybe that wasn't the best example. All right. So the court must grant a new trial unless it clearly appears that the subject matter of the communication was harmless and could not have affected the verdict. The subject matter of Ms. Hill's communication was the evidence being presented at trial by the defense, which is kind of important to the trial, right? These improper comments and efforts to influence the juror's verdict vitiated the sanctity of the jury's deliberation and Murdaugh's sacrosanct rank to a fair and impartial jury. The court, therefore, must grant a new trial if the allegations are proven. I agree with this. Jesus didn't do great in his own trial. I mean, he kind of went in there and just kind of sob-sitted it up. So, yeah, fair enough. And folks, I am not going to make merch that says Jesus was a sob-sit. I'm not. That would get me into trouble. You know what? We're just going to move on past the religious references for today. I'm cutting myself off on that one. And yeah, he did make some better arguments. Saved a woman convicted of adultery from being stoned. That was some excellent advocacy on sentence right there. All right. So these improper communications and efforts to influence the juror's verdict vitiated the sanctity of the... we covered that. The court must therefore grant a new trial if the allegations are proven. In a 6-week trial, people will talk when they should not. They will say things they should not say. Mistakes will be made. Yes, this happens. The participants in a trial are fallible human beings. Lawyers combing the proceedings after the fact will always find they made mistakes and errors. Oh my God, so much that. I can tell you every trial I've ever run, including the ones I've won, I walk out of the trial and my head is full of, I should have said this, I should have done that, I should have done the other thing. It is really the primary skill set of lawyers is to self-doubt later on. So they say if that were enough to force a redo of the trial, no verdict would stand and trials would be repeated forever. To avoid that, courts properly strain to find that mistakes made during trial are harmless, meaning they did not change the result. What he's doing here is he's laying out the prosecution's argument. He's laying out the prosecution's argument of, listen, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect, right? Why do pencils have erasers on them? This is the argument he's making. And he's doing that because he's not in everybody makes mistakes territory, which is also the name of a fantastic hot sauce, by the way. He's not in that territory. He is instead in the territory of, oh my God, what the actual F? And it's great when you can say, you know what? We shouldn't overturn verdicts based on little mistakes, but holy crap, what the hell? Right? Yeah. So, yeah. But the issues now before the court are not the ordinary and inevitable mistakes that occur in any trial. The issue here is that an elected state official engaged in intentional misconduct, deliberately violating a defendant's constitutional right to a fair trial before an impartial jury to secure financial gain for herself. Where a state actor engages in private communication with the jury about the merits of the prosecution, the verdict is impossible to sustain. For example, in Parker and v. Gladden, a bailiff told a juror in a murder trial, that wicked fellow, he is guilty. And That wicked fellow, he is guilty. If you're wondering about the language there, that's because this case is from 1966. So you might not call somebody that wicked fellow anymore. But that statement, the Supreme Court of Oregon found did not require a new trial because it was not shown the statement prejudiced the outcome of the trial. But why is Dick Poot citing this? Because the U.S. Supreme Court reversed, holding the evidence developed against a defendant shall come from the witness stand in a public courtroom where there is a full judicial protection of the defendant's right of confrontation, of cross-examination, and of counsel. And we have followed the undeviating rule that the rights of confrontation and cross-examination are among the fundamental requirements of a constitutionally fair trial, i.e., they didn't get a chance to cross-examine that random bailiff. They didn't get a chance to any of that. This happens outside the courtroom. And keep in mind, like a bailiff can say, listen, I've seen hundreds of hundreds of trials. I know when someone's guilty, that guy's guilty. And the jury is more likely to take that seriously. But that was one statement. Here we have like a dozen allegations of statements. So, in this case, the court has declared on the record that the verdict that the jury, reached is supported by the evidence, circumstantial evidence, direct evidence. All of the evidence pointed to only one conclusion. That's the conclusion you all reach now. So, again, they're citing to ABC News 4's coverage. I bet Law and Crime is super pissed that it's citing to ABC News 4's coverage and not like Law and Crime's feed, or just saying. The court has, therefore, foreshadowed the outcome of any harmless error analysis. But the rule for deciding whether to grant a new trial is not whether the court believes the outcome of the trial would have been the same had Ms. Hill's jury tampering not occurred. If that were the case, the court would sustain a guilty verdict, even if she coerced the jury to vote guilty at gunpoint, because, in the court's opinion, all of the evidence pointed to only one conclusion: guilt of the accused. This is a ridiculous example as a hypothetical. I do this all the time, so I appreciate it, but it doesn't always work. If the strength of the evidence against the accused in the eyes of the court excuses deliberate jury tampering by a state actor, the result is a directed verdict for the prosecution, a structural error. That cannot be the law. So basically they're saying, even if appeals court, even if you think that Murdaugh is the guiltiest guilty person who ever was totally guilty, you still have to do a new trial here. And they're citing case law, noting that even if the judge certainly reached the right result, a directed verdict against the defendant would be per se reversible, no matter how overwhelming the unfavorable evidence, because the very premise of structural error review is that even convictions reflecting the right result are reversed for the sake of protecting a basic right. Whew. This, they got a lot more argument than I think they need here. I think they've got more argument than they need, because I think this speaks largely for itself, but they are covering their bases. Instead, the law requires the subject matter of the communication to be harmless, clearly harmless. Asking the jury what it wants for lunch is clearly harmless. Telling it not to believe the defendant when he testifies is not. Chef's kiss. I love that line. That is a good line. Also, yes, if you haven't hit the like button yet, please do so. That it really does help. So our Supreme Court recently made this point in State v. Green. In Green, during jury deliberations, a juror asked a bailiff what would happen in the event of a deadlock. And he responded the judge would likely give them an Allen charge and ask if they could stay later. So the Court of Appeals held that the bailiff's comments were presumptively prejudicial because of his official position, but that the state rebutted that presumption by showing, for various reasons, that the remark did not, in fact, influence the outcome of the jury's deliberations. So just telling them that, hey, if you guys are deadlocked, you'll probably be asked to stay later, was presumptively prejudicial. But that wasn't, but the Supreme Court affirmed but modified the decision to correct the Court of Appeals reasoning. The communication was not presumptively prejudicial because of the subject matter. The communication was harmless. The bailiff's actions here, though improper, did not touch the merits, but only dealt with the procedural question of how the judge might handle a jury impasse that apparently never materialized. In other words, a bailiff telling a jury that if it is deadlocked, the jury will instruct them to keep deliberating is improper, but likely harmless because the subject matter is procedural or logistical rather than to the merits of the case. Why are they mentioning that here? Well, because in our case, the case of Murdaugh, it's absolutely to the merits of the case. And they're going to go on to tell us that right now. Telling the jury not to believe the defendant's defense or his testimony when he testifies regards the merits of the case. Oh my God, that is self-evident, but they still have to say it. Ms. Hill's extensive, deliberate, and self-interested jury tampering far exceeds the simple bailiff mistakes that forced a retrial in Cameron, where a bailiff's misleading response to a juror's question about sentencing options compromised the jury's impartiality because it left the impression that their verdict could not affect the trial court's sentencing discretion. Or in Blake by Adams v. Spartanburg General Hospital, where a bailiff told a juror that the trial judge did not like a hung jury and that a hung jury places an extra burden on taxpayers. That apparently was good for a reversal as well. Unlike the honest mistakes of the bailiffs in those cases, Ms. Hill had many private conversations with jurors about the merits of the case. She asked jurors about their opinions about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence. She instructed them not to believe evidence presented in Mr. Murdaugh's defense, including his own testimony. She lied to the judge to remove a juror she believed might not vote guilty, and she pressured jurors to reach a guilty verdict quickly so that she could profit from it. Each of these actions violated Ms. Hill's oath of office, her responsibility to the citizenry and the judiciary of the state, and Mr. Murdaugh's constitutional right to a fair and impartial trial. The law applied to these facts requires a new trial. So they basically say, for the above, we need a new trial. Now, I'm just going to say, this looks like really good writing, and I think it is good writing, but it's also really easy to write very persuasive writing when you've got great facts. And assuming these facts are made out, these facts are fantastic facts. Like, this is the stuff you want on an appeal. And you never get. Like, everybody on, every defense lawyer is sitting there and is just like, sitting there going, oh my God, I wish you have this perfect trial where you've got the great, arguments. It looks like Dick Poot has been handed that in the form of some real stuff. And yeah, this never happens. This is like movie stuff, right? This is, if I were a consultant on a movie and they wrote this into their plot, I would literally I'd be sitting there telling the people making the movie going, you got to dial this back. This isn't believable. This is nuts. So yeah. So Exhibit A, affidavit of juror number 630. Now let's go back and just see which one was 630. Was 630 the juror who got kicked out, or was 630 a different juror? I thought it was a different juror who got kicked out, but I don't have a great memory for numbers. So, which was the juror that got kicked out? Juror 758 was the one who went on Good Morning America. Juror 785 was kicked out. So, all right. Now we can go back to Exhibit A, affidavit of juror 630. Personally appeared before me, blank, who is being first duly sworn. We don't need to go through the jurors' names here. Deposes and states as follows. I was juror number 630 in the state of Murdaugh, or in the case of Murdaugh. Towards the end of the trial, after the President's Day break, but before Mr. Murdaugh testified, the clerk of the court, Rebecca Hill, told the jury not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys, which I understood to mean that Mr. Murdaugh would lie when he testified. She also instructed the jury to watch him closely immediately before he testified, including look at his actions and look at his movements, which I understood to mean that he was guilty. Immediately after he testified, the foreperson, Juror 826, said Mr. Murdaugh was crying on cue, which again, not supposed to be doing that at this point. He can do that later, but he's not supposed to be doing that at this point. The foreperson, Juror 826, criticized the former foreperson for handing Mr. Murdaugh a box of tissues when he was crying on the stand while testifying about his murdered son. She told the jury, "We cannot interact with Mr. Murdaugh because that is what the defense wants us to do." The jury frequently discussed the case during breaks before deliberations. Towards the end of the trial, Ms. Hill came to the jury room a lot. Ms. Hill and the foreperson, Juror 826, had private conversations on multiple occasions. The foreperson would tell the bailiff that she needed to speak with Ms. Hill. Ms. Hill would arrive, and then she and the foreperson would go into another room to have a private conversation. The conversations typically lasted 5 to 10 minutes. The foreperson never said anything about the content of the conversation. For example, she never communicated logistical information after those conversations. This happened 2 or more times, more frequently towards the end of the trial. When we began deliberations, Ms. Hill told us that this shouldn't take long, and that if we deliberated past 11 p.m., we would be taken directly to a hotel. We had driven from our homes that morning, and we were not prepared to stay overnight, i.e., they didn't have their toothbrushes, they didn't have their, they didn't have the tiny mints for their pillow, they didn't have their teddy bears, they didn't have all of those things that they would have wanted. They didn't have their PJs, etc. Additionally, smokers on the jury asked to be allowed to take smoke breaks, but were told they could not smoke until deliberations were complete. I had questions about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt, but voted guilty because I felt pressured by the other jurors. After the verdict and immediately before sentencing, Ms. Hill pressured the jury to speak as a group to reporters from the television show. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Squiggle! Further affiant saith not. God, I hate that stuff in affidavits, but is what it is. All right. Now, we're just going to take 1 second. I got to catch up on some super chats because we gotta do that, or else I'm going to get buried. So, I see Sandy. Thank you for 10 gifted memberships. Pants, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Jan, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. And Rhineman YYC, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Lazarus, thank you for the membership there. The Vez from Quebec, I think a new trial will find him guilty again. It's entirely possible. But if true, he deserves a new trial none the least. Can't wait to hear your take. Yep. And that's the thing. We should have a trial that we can have confidence in. And I don't know that I have confidence in this at this point. Can you download the book and read it to us, please? I don't know if I want to read their book. I don't know if I want to give them the money. I don't know. I'll have to decide on that. I'll have to think about it. Only fooled by is in quotes. What's the rest? Well, we'll see that in the affidavits that we're looking at here. So, yeah. Rhineman YYC, if capital punishment was on the table, could these acts be called attempted deletion? No. It would not be, but it would be all sorts of other offenses. Kristen M96, it came out last week. He wants to plead to the federal financial crimes. If this case is tossed and he pleads, how does that change things with prisons, etc.? I don't know that. I mean, I would not be surprised if he says, whoa. You know what? I want to back up and not necessarily plead to the financial crimes quite yet. Because there's some shenanigans happening. He may decide he wants to fight them. Could a juror say anything to the defense lawyer if the person knows what they were told by the clerk was wrong? After the trial, they can talk to the defense lawyers. So, yeah. This is crazy. This is insane. Let's read the book together. It's $10. That's $10 too much. I would probably rather spend the $10 on, I don't know, orphans. R.E. Ms. Hill, bless her heart. Yeah, bless her little cotton socks, because, yeah. I eagerly await Ms. Hill's trial. Going to be fun. I hope they televise that if it runs. Yep. Rachel Dewitt, question. Do you think Ms. Hill could end up in jail for this? I think there is possibilities of that. If they can back all this up, I think there's possibilities of that. This is insane. There's some pot versus kettle smell to this. Murdaugh isn't known for surrounding himself with scruples. I'm curious to see testimony and proofs. That's what we're going through now. 40 Doherty, if he had admitted guilt after he was convicted, would he still have the possibility of getting a new trial after this? Yep. People have trials with confessions all the time. All the time. Jesus of Nazareth, am I being detained? Love it. If I ever decide to make some shirts that'll probably offend people, I will, yeah. So, Othimer, a bit wrong there, Runkle. Jesus Christ always works the nepotism in heaven angle for the best kind of appeal, a full pardon. Yeah, I'm just going to skate on by. I've gotten myself into enough trouble here. Kathy at Oz, in a new trial, would evidence from the last one be out? I think it'd be admissible. I think they could impeach him, for instance, on his, on that. Luke Pearson, this judge thinks 403 is prejudicial versus probative is an issue to be decided by the jury. No amount of argument is too little here. Fair point. Maybe they just got to hammer it home. Suzanne S., first analysis I've seen. I know there's others who've done them and others who are going to be doing them. So there's going to be lots of analysis to go around. Uncivil says, would you like me to read some book on stream? I will leave that one to you, Kurt. So, yeah. Special KL says, bad as I wanted him to be guilty, this is not right. I agree. Even if you think he's as guilty as sin, this is not how our court system should work. Evil Critter says, I'm a half hour behind, but is there a chance Murdaugh set this up with her to get a mistrial? It was his family's courthouse. It's all a setup. I'm just going to say, if you wanted to get, to set things up to get a mistrial, the way you'd do that is you'd convince the jurors to vote innocent, and to acquit, because if they never actually found that out, you'd just be acquitted. Why would you do it in a way that convicts you? And Potter has opinions. Potter's had an interesting day. We can talk about Potter later. All right. So let us resume here. So, affidavit of Holly Miller. And you might be wondering, why is Holly Miller not redacted, whereas others were redacted? Well, because Holly Miller is not a juror. On August 6th, 2023, Dick Harpootlian, Jim Griffin, and I met with Blank, who is juror number 741 in the case of State of South Carolina and Richard Alexander Murdaugh. At the meeting on August 6th, she indicated she would sign an affidavit. However, we were unable to arrange with her a suitable time and place. So instead, they just went and, used her statements to the lawyers there. I don't know that this affidavit's going to go anywhere, because if I was the court, I'd be like, listen, bring an affidavit of the juror or don't, but we're not entertaining this hearsay. This is pretty clearly hearsay. They're hoping that this hearsay gets admitted through some sort of exception, but this is obviously hearsay. During the meeting, Blank relayed the following information to us. During the trial, she witnessed the clerk of the court, Becky Hill, come to the jury room, and Ms. Hill and the foreperson went into the bathroom. After Ms. Hill and the foreperson exited the bathroom, Ms. Hill told the jurors they could not ask the foreperson questions. I'm just going to say, if a friend of mine came over, a female friend of mine, and me and that female friend went into the bathroom together for a time, and then I emerged and told my wife that she could not ask any questions about what we did in there, I would not have a wife anymore. That just seems sus as hell. So, several times during the trial, Ms. Hill told the jurors that the media would want to interview jurors at the end of the trial, And during one of these conversations, she passed out business cards from the media to jurors. At the end of the trial, Ms. Hill told Juror that no one from the media wanted to interview her. Interesting on that. Interesting. Right before the defense put up their case, Ms. Hill told the jurors, "Y'all are going to hear things that will throw you all off. Don't let this distract you or mislead you." So the prosecution's already presented their evidence, and now before the defense does, it's now you guys are going to hear some BS, is basically that. After Alex testified, 8 jurors indicated they did not believe his testimony. Well, how could they if they were being set up like that, right? So Juror recalled that juror number 544, known as Boston by many of the jurors, was very emotional during the trial. A guy whose nickname is Boston was emotional? Huh. During the visit to Moselle, juror 826 and somebody else walked to the scene together. Then juror 826 began walking with the clerk of the court, Becky Hill. Why would they be walking with Becky Hill? Yeah. There were times the jurors were not kept together, but were in 2 separate rooms. The juror noticed jurors talking about the case before deliberations began. Neither she nor juror 785 joined in on the conversations about Alex. As the jury was deliberating, she believes Judge Newman came to the room she was in and told her the jury would have to spend the night at a hotel if they did not have a vote by a certain time, but she does not recall the time deadline. Now, no, that's a little different because she says that Judge Newman came to the room. The other person said it was Becky Hill. And so that's a distinction. And also just the have to spend the night at a hotel is different than you will be taken to the hotel straight away and you won't have any opportunity to get stuff. So, yeah. So, juror 741 was the first former juror to provide information that the clerk of the court made statements to members of the jury about the evidence presented during the trial prior to jury deliberations. Ms. Hill's conduct was corroborated by other jurors during subsequent interviews. Further affiant saith not. I mean, that's archaic, but I guess it's better than comes now. Now, I just also want to I think Dick Poot's legal team fucked up a little bit here. And I'm going to tell you why. Here's what we're going to look at. I want you to look at this signature, Holly Miller, right? You see how there's that little like I spot over the E here, which is odd. So that's our signature for this affiant, right? That is also the signature for the notary public on the other affidavit. I don't like when you've got your notary public on one thing is your witness on the other. And I mean, it's probably not fatal. It's just not great. I don't want that to be a situation. So, yeah. On to Exhibit C. I see a notary cannot notarize their own signature. They weren't notarizing their own signature. They notarized one document that was signed by one witness, and then they are also the affiant in a second affidavit. So Exhibit A, they're the notary. Exhibit B, they're the affiant. So, yeah. All right. Draft transcript of records excerpt from in-camera conference. So this is the transcript. All right. So the court. Okay, well, let me see what Becky is talking about. I wanted to revisit the Facebook post that you mentioned yesterday. Ms. Hill says, right. And the court says, that's Becky Hill, the clerk of the court. Why is the court saying that? Because this is being audio recorded. And so he's just making sure that the audio recording clearly identifies who is who. Can you tell us about that Facebook post? Ms. Hill says, yes, I think it was Friday evening. Just for a brief moment, I perused Facebook, got on Walter Burrow word of mouth, and saw where someone had said that, well, it was the ex-husband of a juror, and he said that he noticed that his ex-wife was saying that she was on the jury and saying stuff about how her verdict was going to be, and that he was the ex-husband, but she was just known for talking way too much. And then I just kept on scrolling because that was enough for me. I've gotten enough. So that is odd for the timing, right? Because they've noted that February, that Friday would have been, after that message was supposedly deleted. So when I heard there was an email on Monday, I figured the two went together if it was true. That's a hell of an assumption. Well, she's confirmed that she has an ex-husband who she has 3 restraining orders out against. So Ms. Hill says, right. And then we looked on Monday after you told me to try to go back and look for it, and we couldn't find it. But then we found out his name, and we found the post and printed it out where he said that he had put something up, but that he had deleted it at the time that he put stuff out there that wasn't nice. Court says he said he got drunk afterwards. Mr. Metter says something about the devil. We read all this before, so I'm going to see if there's something new in it. The court says, okay, I just wanted to have that on the record. You're reading a Facebook post by the ex-husband who said it. Of course, you haven't talked with him, so you don't know where he got his information from. Ms. Hill says, I don't. I can find it, though. Mr. Fernandez says, we do know his name for what it's worth. The court says, do you think he will be sober? Mrs. Hill, I don't know. Probably not if I had to guess. Why would you... Why? Why is that necessary? Mr. Arputlian says, it is Wednesday. Well, is today Tuesday or Wednesday? Mr. Fernandez says Wednesday. So Dick Poot didn't know what day it was. It happens to me too, so I can't blame him too much. Well, it's Wednesday night, so and then it's cut off. That's all they've included. So, all right. Exhibit D, Rebecca Hill, Behind the Doors of Justice excerpts. People wanted to know if we would read some of the book. We're going to read some of the book because it's right here, right now. All right. So this is the cover. Rebecca Becky Hill, Clerk of the Court. You should not be putting that on a book you are selling as private material. That already makes me upset. And with Neil R. Gordon. I'm guessing Mr. Gordon did some of the writing, but I don't know. Behind the Doors of Justice, the Murdaugh Murders. And it includes her signature, Rebecca Hill Becky, on the front. Maybe they had a signed copy. I don't know. Wouldn't that be funny if they're running with a signed copy? Or is this... Chat, can you answer the question? Is this like signature on her actual covers? Or is this a signed copy? Because that's exceptional if it's a signed copy. And we're going to have to zoom out a little bit because we've actually just got the scans here. So, professional, and we bonded over a cancer diagnosis that both of our families had endured. I don't know who they're talking about there. While Dateline producers were in town for the trial in February 2023, they asked for Judge Newman's cell phone number, which I was given permission to provide to them. Then Craig reached out to Judge Newman to reconnect. Craig grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, where his family and Judge Newman's family knew each other. In fact, Craig was friends with Judge Newman's late son. As Judge Newman was beginning in his first of many terms as a circuit court judge in Columbia, Craig was beginning his career there at WIS-TV before getting recruited to a station in Washington, D.C., and then the NBC News network in New York. That exclusive interview with Judge Newman and his daughter, also a judge, took place in Columbia. And I assume that's still the Columbia in the U.S. and not the Columbia, like nose candy Columbia. Valerie Bowerlane. Valerie Bowerlane is a national Wall Street Journal reporter who has covered the South for 18 years. She was the pool reporter sent to Moselle with pool photographer Andrew J. Whitaker of the Post and Courier newspaper. In October 2021, Valerie signed a book deal with a division of the iconic Penguin Random House Publishing Company for a book project about the Murdaugh family of South Carolina. As it so happened, my 55th birthday fell during the trial in the spring of 2023. Nobody cares. You're not the story. My birthday is March 10th, and Valerie was born in late February, so it was decided to have a party for both of us at her Airbnb on the night of her birthday. She invited many of her colleagues who were covering the trial for the regional and national media outlets. Ooh, that's not good. Why is the clerk of the court hanging out with all the reporters? There was food, birthday cake, a lot of laughs, and a little truth serum in the form of liquid refreshments. I could use some truth serum right now. All right. So, what is it? As we were cleaning up the party, a few of us were asked how we would vote at that point if the trial, or in the trial, if we were members of the jury. So, before answering, we pledged a cone of silence, and for that reason, I cannot reveal the results of our straw jury pool. What I can say is that many of the party guests agreed with what ended up becoming the actual verdict of the trial. Okay, so we know how she's thinking then. Like that's sort of made clear. Just a wee bit. The Today Show and Dateline. Sunday night after Alex was sentenced, I accompanied 3 jurors from the trial to New York City. As I mentioned earlier, Craig Melvin and Savannah Guthrie of the Today Show interviewed the 3 jurors during a 7-minute high-energy segment. While we were all in the Today Show green room, we met and took photos with country music star Dustin Lynch, who was also getting ready to appear on the program to sing one of his hit songs. Once the taping of the Today Show concluded, we were whisked away from the 850-foot skyscraper building by a driver in a black Chevy Tahoe to a different studio near 30 Rock, where Dateline taped some of its segments. What stuck out to me was one of the jurors mentioned to a producer that she had a craving for pizza and cheesecake, and the next thing we know, both were delivered in time for lunch. Wow, what a writer. We're getting into her lunch. This is poison. This trip was extra special for me because it was my first time ever flying in an airplane. Nobody cares. We flew from Charleston to New York City, and we could order whatever we wanted. I chose pretzels and a Coke to relieve some of my anxiety. Then a black Chevy Tahoe car service, she's really on about the Chevy Tahoes, was set to pick us up from LaGuardia Airport, and we got to ride through one of those dark underwater tunnels that let us out in the city that never sleeps. NBC put us in the hands of the fabulous Haley Barber, Dateline producer, who put all of us up at a nice Manhattan hotel and fed us at a restaurant on the Avenue of the Americas, a block away from 30 Rock in Midtown Manhattan, on the eve of the interviews. Afterwards, the jurors told me they felt like they were heard and loved their 15 minutes of fame in the Big Apple. I feel like she loved her 15 minutes of fame. And like, if you guys remember with Morgan Tremaine and, them going, well, what about your 15 minutes of fame? Does it seem like she kind of fell in love with all of this attention? Just a wee bit? Yeah, this now some people have said, hey, like, you need to buy this book and read this book, and I'm going, oh my god, I need to unread this book. I need to unread the portions that I already read, but I guess there's more of it, so we're gonna do that. She's got a Bible quote in here. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do. I will read that. If I was the prosecution, I would read that at her sentencing if she is convicted. Because that'd be some irony. Working with jurors is always a unique experience, and like with any jury, we had some behind-the-scenes happenings with our jurors, the alternates, and the originals for the Murdaugh trial. While most of the jurors were focused and engaged during the Murdaugh trial, we did have one juror, who was an alternate at one point, who was not. She was more focused on the crowd, who was watching, who was or wasn't following Judge Newman's rules, and so on. For example, she caught a new visitor to the courtroom who was sitting directly across from her, who looked like she may have been taking a picture of the jury, and that wasn't going to fly with her. Another juror couldn't or wouldn't sit still during the trial, and it seemed like every time she shifted her chair, it made a loud squeak. Occasionally, attorneys would wait for the rhythm of the squeaks to subside before continuing their cross-examination. Then there was Egg Lady Juror. This juror worked on a monkey farm in the Low Country, and she drove Judge Newman bananas one weekend. Pun intended. Are there actually monkey farms? Like, what happens at a monkey farm? Do they raise them for meat? Hopefully not for milk. I can't imagine monkey milk going all that much. So, and also she worked on a monkey farm. How many jurors work on a monkey farm? Yeah. Through the Facebook page, Walterboro Word of Mouth, about 20,000 followers saw this juror's ex-husband post about how she was talking way too much to friends and family about the case. Many people became aware of the situation after court on Friday, February 24th, and it was brought to the attention of Judge Newman. This is fantastic because now that she's repeating these allegations outside of the court process, that opens her up to, potential defamation and so forth issues. So that juror might want to be talking to a lawyer as well. Oh, wait, they are. Those jurors have their own lawyer. So let's see. I typically didn't have the time or attention to watch any media coverage of the trial, but on that Friday night, I scrolled through the Walterboro Word of Mouth social feed and saw the post from the ex-husband, but he didn't mention the juror's name or her juror number. At the time, I didn't think anything of it and kept scrolling, mainly because I had been inundated with emails and messages from people all over the world about what they'd heard, what they'd seen, how the prosecution and defense should run their cases, how Judge Newman should rule, what to address with anyone and everyone involved in the courthouse, and so on. I felt like a principal dealing with tattletales and problems and issues every day. It was tiring. When Monday morning came, Judge Newman asked me to find the social media post. One of our techies in the clerk's office, Lori Weiss, looked and couldn't find it at first. Luckily, though, she kept looking and saw where the post was taken down and replaced with an apology from the juror's ex-husband. He said Satan had gotten a hold of him, and he had been drinking at the time he posted and was now very sorry. After Judge Newman interviewed this juror and corroborating witnesses about the situation, he removed the juror from the court before court started that Monday morning. We learned later the ex-spouses hadn't seen each other in 14 years, and the former juror had 3 restraining orders against her ex-husband. That's not true because we see that contradicted in the transcript. The transcript says that they knew that at the time. When a juror is removed from a jury, it's normal practice for the judge to ask if there are any personal items they'd like to retrieve from the private jury room. When Judge Newman graciously presented this question to the former juror, she said she just wanted to get her eggs, which caused some laughter in the courtroom and nationally once the media got a hold of the story. Judge Newman even broke out into one of the largest grins I've ever seen. One of the other jurors raised chickens on their farm and had brought in a dozen eggs to whoever wanted them. At this time, eggs were selling for about $8 a dozen, which was very high, so it's understandable why the removed juror wanted her eggs. One of our local singer-songwriters, so there's this page number skip here, 97 to 108. Guys, I can't keep reading this. This is so bad. This is so boring. I mean, it's good for evidence, but holy crap, she is not a good writer. She is not a good writer. I'm going to say, if you're covering a trial and the most interesting thing you could talk about is how a juror wanted her eggs, shoot me in the face. Oh. All right. So, moving on. Oh, this is the bit about the Moselle aspect where they say, just as the jury would do in the span of 3 hours, we unanimously came to our own verdict in just 3 hours. Yeah. All right. Yeah, Exhibit E, Timothy Stone Facebook post. I gotta say, we're gonna read a Facebook post, and the writing on this Facebook post is gonna be better quality than what we just read. So here we go. Timothy Stone. Folks, I posted an ugly post yesterday, to which I have deleted and kind of around. We read that. Amy Corey responded, I don't know why this wasn't redacted. I'm sorry. I should have done that. So some stuff about God loves you. And then somebody else says, why apologize for something that you really meant? You meant what you said. Apologies don't mean anything if you constantly do it. And Karen Smith says, it's great that you apologized. More about accepting God. I'm just trying to see if there's anything here that actually connects this to a court process. I don't know why any of these replies were included. They're completely irrelevant. All right. Lots of talk of God is really what it comes down to. All right. Affidavit of Tim Stone. Personally appeared before me, Tim Stone, who first being duly sworn, deposes and states as follows. I'm the ex-husband of the juror. I did not post anything to the Facebook group Walterboro Word of Mouth between January 23rd, 2023 and March 2nd, 2023. I did not post anything on this social media page or my own Facebook social media page about blank being a juror, that blank was talking way too much to friends and family about the case, or that Satan had got a hold of me and I'd been drinking at the time I posted and was now very sorry. Nor did I post what is attached as Exhibit A, which has been represented to me to be an alleged post to the Walterboro Word of Mouth Facebook page and a court exhibit in the trial. I do not have a Facebook page set up as Timothy Stone. My profile name is Tim Stone, and my Facebook page is redacted. That is a good thing. So you can see that this is posted as Timothy Stone, and he says, that's not the name I use. I post as Tim Stone. I was never contacted by law enforcement, the South Carolina Attorney General's office, the clerk of court, Becky Hill, or anyone at the Colleton County Clerk of Court's office about Exhibit A, or a post on the Walterboro Word of Mouth Facebook page concerning my ex-wife. I did not know she was on the Murdaugh jury until I heard her voice on a recording when she was being excused as a juror and she was discussing something about eggs. I guess the eggs are the real star of this show. Now we've got the affidavit of P. Barber. All right, I'm an attorney in the firm of Richard A. Harpootlian, P.A., also known as Dick Poot, and counsel of record for defendant Richard Alexander Murdaugh. On August 18th, I met with Tim Stone at his home. He provided his Facebook login information and allowed me to download a copy of all of his Facebook activity from the relevant time period. True copy is attached as Exhibit A to this affidavit. Contents of the download speak for themselves, but review of them shows no post was made during the key time. There are no posts whatsoever to Walterboro Word of Mouth. Facebook's stated retention policy for deleted posts is 30 days, so any posts deleted older than that would not be recoverable. Exhibit H, affidavit of juror number 785. So we got another juror. I think this was the juror who was kicked off. So I was juror 785 during the presentation of the defense case after President's Day, but before Mr. Murdaugh testified in his own defense. Becky Hill told the jurors not to be fooled by the evidence presented to the jury by Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys. And so the quote is, that's just her quote in the affidavit. Somebody said, why do we only have this quote? It's because that's the portion that this witness could remember. In late February, Ms. Hill questioned me about a Facebook post on the Walterboro Word of Mouth page. She summoned me to speak with her alone in an office in the courthouse. Should not have happened. She told me someone emailed her about a post my ex-husband, Tim Stone, purportedly made, which purportedly stated that I made comments to him about the guilt or innocence of Mr. Murdaugh. She directly asked me whether I was inclined to vote guilty or not guilty. I told her I had not made up my mind and that I wanted to hear all the evidence before deciding. Ms. Hill said the post said I'd been drinking with my ex-husband, and that while drunk with him, I expressed opinions on the guilt or innocence of Mr. Murdaugh. That never happened, and I told Miss Hill that never happened. I did not go drinking with my ex-husband. In fact, I had not seen him in approximately 10 years. I asked to see the post, but Ms. Hill would not or could not show it to me. I've never seen it, and to my knowledge, no one has. Later that day, Ms. Hill told me SLED and the sheriff's office personnel went to my ex-husband's house, and he purportedly confirmed he made the post. She told me she would reinstate a restraining order I previously had against my ex-husband. I did not know about the apology post referencing Satan until Ms. Hill's book was published. You know, I think they're going to have to depose Satan on this one. I'm just kidding. I have since reviewed that post and can definitely state the post is not by my ex-husband. He does not go by Timothy. The profile picture is not him, and the phrasing of the post is not phrasing he would use. It appears to be a post by another person who happens to have the same name. There's a few Timothys out there and Tims, so yeah. It appears to be a post by another person who happens to have the same name. It does not appear to be a post to the Walterboro Word of Mouth Facebook page. When Ms. Hill first asked me about the Facebook posting purportedly made by my ex-husband, I showed her a picture of my ex-husband. For that reason, I now believe she always knew the apology post referencing Satan was not posted by my ex-husband. And if she never told the court that, that's like I would ride that hard in cross-examination because oof. On March 2nd, 2023, the day of the verdict, I received a call from my ex-husband, Tim Stone, as I was getting on the bus to travel with the rest of the jurors to the courthouse. I did not answer. This phone call upset me greatly, and I asked to speak with the clerk of the court, which I did by using telephone using bailiff Mr. Bill's phone. I told her I was scared. She said that the Murdaughs probably got to him. Ooh. Oh my God. What the fuckery is going on here? Ms. Hill then asked me questions about my opinion regarding Mr. Murdaugh's guilt. She asked if I was leaning one way or the other. I told her that Creighton Waters' closing was good, but I still had questions. She asked me what kind of questions, and I replied, questions about the guns. She asked what would make me think he's innocent. I stated that no murder weapon was found. She then asked, well, what makes you think he's guilty? I said Paul's video at the dog kennels. She then stated that everything Mr. Murdaugh has said has been lies, and that I should forget all about the guns. They will never be seen again. Ms. Hill then asked about the views of the rest of the jury. She told me if the foreperson would just go in and ask for a raise of hands, this will just be done and over with. She said everyone needs to be on the same page. She then again said she would reinstate a restraining order I previously had against my ex-husband, and she would call Judge Newman about the restraining order. I then went to the jury room. Approximately 10 minutes later, I was excused from the jury. During the proceedings, I asked Judge Newman if he'd spoken with the clerk of the court. He only said, this is not because of your ex-husband. 2 weeks later, I did answer a call from my ex-husband. I angrily confronted him about the post he purportedly made because I knew I had not made the comments he claimed I made. He emphatically denied ever making such Facebook posts, and he genuinely seemed not to know what I was talking about. Fair enough. On one day during my jury service, approximately 1 or 2 weeks before the verdict, Juror 684 and Juror 826 were in the single toilet unisex bathroom together for an extended period. They were known to do so frequently to discuss the case. Juror number 729 referred to it as A&D time. A&D. God, please tell me that A&D don't stand for what I hope they don't stand for. Because neither of those is Becky Hill. What is A and what is D? What is A and what is D? I really hope not. Oh my God. I hope this is televised. And I hope that I hope they get asked this question, because like Rebecca is not A or D, Hill is not A or D, Becky is not A or D. But apparently A and D got a lot of time together. All right. That's exceptional. In the van going to the courthouse, Juror 864 said Special Agent David Owen lied on the stand, but that nothing would happen to him. When we visited the Moselle crime scene, Ms. Hill and Juror 826 walked off together, avoiding other jurors in order to have a private conversation. I own a rental property, which is leased to 2 tenants. I delivered a refrigerator to the property. I was removed from the jury on the day of the verdict because a coworker of Ms. Webb purportedly said I expressed an opinion on Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence while delivering the refrigerator. Ms. Webb then worked at Domino's Pizza in Walterboro, so the coworker would be some employee of Domino's Pizza in Walterboro. I do not know whether Ms. Webb actually made such a statement at Domino's Pizza or whether a coworker actually heard any such statement. After I was dismissed from the jury, I spoke with Ms. Webb and Ms. Dandridge, who both vehemently stated to me and my husband that the affidavits the prosecution drafted for their signature was not what they said to him. They told me Sled showed up at their home at 10 p.m. after they were asleep, removed them from their home, put them in separate cars, and questioned them. Mr. Dandridge said he told them I did not say anything about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence. Sled returned 30 minutes later, again woke them from their bed to serve subpoenas on them to appear in court the next day. All right, so there's been some controversy over whether Sled is going to is going to be investigating this. Sled says we want to investigate this. This is ours. We have to investigate this. I don't think Sled should be investigating this, given these allegations here. I think Sled needs to leave this alone and let somebody else deal with it. They arrived at the courthouse at 9 a.m. the next day and were held for 9 hours until 6 p.m. when Sled officers or a prosecutor finally presented typed affidavits to them, saying they were their statements from the previous night that had been recorded by dash cams in the patrol cars. They said they signed the affidavits without reading them. Never do that. But, oh my God. Whoa. This is terrifying. As I previously testified, I never discussed the merits of the Murdaugh case with Ms. Webb, Mr. Dandridge, or any other person present, nor did I express an opinion on Mr. Murdaugh's guilt or innocence while delivering the refrigerator or during any other interaction with them during the trial. All right. Exhibit I, draft transcript of records excerpt from in-camera conference on February 28th. So, juror, no. The court, have you put anything on Facebook? Juror, not regarding the case. I put a positive post on. I gave Ms. Becky my full access to my Facebook. I put positive posts on. I've done that for the past 3 years, but court, has anyone posted anything on Facebook about you? And juror, I wasn't aware of it until Ms. Becky told me today. The court, what did she tell me? The court, or juror says, she asked me if I had an ex-husband, and I said, yeah. And she asked me if I had talked to him about the case or being on jury duty, and I said no. And I questioned her why she was asking me that. I haven't seen my ex-husband since 2014. Court, does he live in the area? Juror, he does now. He lives in Cottageville. Court, okay. And I have 3 restraining orders against him, warning. So he's basically up to no good? Juror says, I wouldn't say that. I'd say a lot worse, but that's a nice way to put it. High five to the jury. I wouldn't say he's up to no good. I'd say it much worse. I love the turn of phrase. Props to the juror. But she told me that. I was very upset after she told me that. Like I said, I have 3 restraining orders against him. I wouldn't have anything to do with him if I didn't have a child with him, but I haven't seen him since 2014 when we got a divorce. I have talked to him within the last year because I got a call at work that my son was in jail and needed a ride home. Oh, I wonder what that's about. And I did call his father and ask him to go get him, which he did not do. Oh, yes. You can see that they are really on good terms. I called because the son was in jail. He's got to go get picked up. I asked Dad to pick him up. He didn't do it. But other than that, I haven't seen him, talk to him, or anything else since 2014, other than getting restraining orders in Colleton County, one in Orangeburg County, and I have one in Berkeley County. Court. Wow. But Ms. Becky said she went to look for the post again and that it had been deleted. And I don't know who she talked to or anything else, but she said apparently, when did she tell you that? It was after you let us go on the last break. I was very upset. She came down and talked to me and said that apparently, I don't know who talked to him, but said that he was drunk and he removed the post. Court says, so has she discussed the case with any of the jurors? Has the clerk discussed anything about the case with anyone on the jury? Juror, not that I'm aware of. Now, the prosecution is going to ride that line. And every other statement from the jurors where they said, oh, yes, nobody's interfered with us. The prosecution is going to be like, well, were you lying? And that'll be interesting when we get to the evidentiary aspects of it. So the court says, okay, she was just discussing with, and the juror says, she pulled me aside. And when we went downstairs after the last break, I want to say it was after lunch, and we came back. That's when she first told me about it. And when we went back into court, I was kind of screening the audience to make sure my ex wasn't out there. And she came downstairs after that break and told me that she'd found out that he was drunk and made a drunk post. And I don't know what happened from there. I have no clue. And you work at I work at a monkey farm. Monkey farm. I didn't know monkey farms were a thing, but apparently there's a monkey farm. And all right, so they've got a good reason for the monkey farm. Juror says, I work in the lab. For the lab, all I do is watch monkeys. It's a testing facility where they try to come up with cures for like AIDS, cancer, leukemia. All right, so it's a research monkey farm. That is reassuring because I was worrying that there was gonna be like monkey milk on the market, and yeah. The court says, you're happy to be here away from the monkeys for a while? Juror says, yeah, I miss my monkeys. Yeah. So are they pretty smart as everyone says? Juror says, they're very intelligent and they hurt and they bleed and they have feelings like you or I do. They do. The court says, okay, at this point in time, have you made up your mind as to guilt or innocence though? Juror says, I haven't. I was trying to wait on closing arguments because those are usually pretty good. I love that. Closing arguments are the best part. I've been waiting for that. Court says, you've been on jury duty before? Juror says, I was, but it kind of really sucked because they called us back and we were, anticipating it was my first jury and they made up an agreement and we never even ever got to sit on the jury. Jurors hate when they don't get to deliver a verdict. They hate it. Defense lawyers work out, deals and so forth. Jurors hate that. Hate it. And we can see that there. They're like, it sucked. I had jury duty and I didn't even get to jury duty. So, okay. Any questions either for anyone to ask? Mr. Griffin says, no, Your Honor. Mr. Waters says, no, sir. Court says, okay, if you will stand right inside, juror, follow her. Court says, follow her for a second. So Gabby just right outside, inside the other door, but not all the way out. Juror exits the room. All right, comments. Mr. Griffin says, Your Honor, I think that satisfies it, and she hasn't talked to anybody, hasn't expressed an opinion, and hasn't made up an opinion. She's got an ex-husband that she has 3 restraining orders against him. Court says, that's understandable. Have a good night. Is that the same? No, they jumped 6 pages. They should tell us when they're jumping 6 pages. Court says, that's understandable. Have a good night. Juror, thank you. Juror, okay. They're going to bring me back to my car, right? Court says, they didn't leave you, did they? Juror says, yes. Court, oh, they did? Law clerk, no, I'll go get her a bailiff and they'll go get her. I'll go down there to a bailiff. Juror, they left. Law clerk, and make sure they get her home. There's a break in proceedings. Juror, y'all have a good night. Court, okay. Mr. Griffin, bye. Juror exits the room. Court, well, Mr. Waters, I got a name now. Court says, a name, Clifford Dandridge B Street. Oh boy, I'm not too pleased about the clerk interrogating a juror as opposed to coming to me and bringing it to me. Mr. Griffin says, I was surprised to hear that. Court says, yeah, so I bet you were surprised to hear it, Mr. Griffin. I bet you're even more surprised now. Exhibit J, affidavit of H. Miller regarding juror number 326, another juror. Okay. So once again, they met with juror number 326, relayed the following information to us. Why is juror number 326 not putting their own affidavit? Why are you doing hearsay? Don't do the hearsay. Do the good evidence, not the bad evidence. This is bad. Juror 326 was asked if Ms. Hill told the jurors not to let defense mislead them. He did not specifically recall this statement, but he did recall that Ms. Hill commented to him and other jurors about the photos that would be admitted into evidence, indicating that the images would be disturbing. Fair. I feel like that is a fair comment, but maybe not from her to make. Juror 326 also stated that the jurors were stationed in two separate rooms when they were not in the courtroom, and that he was in a room with mostly other male jurors. He was not in the same room as jurors 630, 741, and 785. Juror 326 stated that Ms. Hill was visit the other room more often, and that he could not hear what she was telling the jurors in the other room. During the trial, Juror 326 and others discussed the case prior to deliberations. He did not discuss the case with anyone outside of the jurors. He further commented that some of the jurors were going into their office because of financial reasons, and that people were talking to coworkers because coworkers wanted info. Jurors get paid dog poop. They get paid dog shit wages. It's often like you get $20 a day or something stupid like that. And, it's like, oh, well, and the thing is that a lot of these juror rates, like in terms of what they'd get paid, were set in 1920, and that was considered a fine rate because you could buy some, liquefied petroleum gas for your oil lamps in your house. You could, pay your servant. You could hire a horse-drawn carriage to get to and from the courthouse. You were set on $20. And nowadays, $20 doesn't buy you your coffee at Starbucks, right? Nowadays, it's like, if you end up taking a taxi to and from the courthouse, you are, you're out of money before you've even made it to the courthouse. So $20, no longer goes as far as it once did. Now, so because of that, you get people who are pretty desperate to not go bankrupt because you're on jury duty, but your rent doesn't take a holiday. So, people, so they go into the office. It happens, they do whatever work. Sometimes they're working at, at night. So, yeah. Before deliberations began, Juror 326 indicated that minor conversation led him to know who was a yes and who was a no. His vote changed with new evidence. As the jury was deliberating, the bailiff and Ms. Hill told the jurors that they could not take a smoke break during deliberations. There were 6 smokers on the jury. Was he a smoker, though? Were any of these people who did that smokers? After the trial concluded, a group chat was formed with the jurors, and Juror 326 dropped off of the group chat because there were too many chats. Oh, bro, I feel you. I am in like 40 Discords, and I need to be in fewer Discords because it's just, it's getting to me. When asked if he thought the clerk of the court, Becky Hill, was inserting himself in the process of the trial, Juror 326 responded, I can see this. But they didn't put out an affidavit. Exhibit K, memorandum from Rebecca Hill. Ooh, this was going to be good. So, from Rebecca Hill to DreamWorks, aka Texas Crew Productions. Dear Blank, I'm looking forward to your upcoming docuseries on the Murdaugh case, and I hope you'll be able to use some of my interview, should you choose to. Because I am an elected official, we'll need to modify 3 clauses in the location agreement you presented to me as it relates to my authority. Please change the word owner to Colleton County in every reference in the agreement. Dates and location fees. They agree to pay the Colleton County Treasury a fee of $1,000 per day for the courthouse facilities. Payment will be made by the close of production. Colleton County, South Carolina can only enter into a legal agreement for services if it is to be governed here in South Carolina, not New York. As an elected official, I have no authority outside of the state of South Carolina. This is stupid. And they called this stupid in the filing. So if you read the contracts you sign all the time, because we all sign contracts all the time, right? Let's say you agree to a cell phone contract, right? You're gonna give them money and they're going to make your cell phone work, right? So that's a contract. And those contracts will almost always include a clause that is basically a choice of laws clause. And they'll often include a clause that is a choice of venues clause. So, choice of laws. Why would I include a choice of laws clause? Well, let's say I am making a deal with somebody in, I don't know, South Carolina. We'll just pick that off the page. I might want to say, listen, this is going to be governed by the law of Edmonton, Alberta, because I know the law of Edmonton, Alberta, and that makes this easy. But that doesn't mean that the other person is acting outside of their jurisdiction. It's just that they're agreeing to a particular set of legal rules. And you can also agree to like a different venue thing. She somehow... I don't even know what the heck is wrong with her here, but this is stupid. This thing that she's put in this is stupid. And it hurts my brain, and I am angry at her just for including this. But also, in exchange for the use of the likeness of Rebecca Hill in an interview, a something of 5-second video and audio clips, or a minimum of 5-second video and audio clips, will accompany the usage of the first reference. The book cover for the book Behind the Doors of Justice, the Murdaugh Murders, will be shown, and audio will include Becky's introduction as clerk of the court for Colleton County and author of the book. Yeah. Just that little note here is jail. Like jail. Send her to jail for that. Right? Right? Like she's trying to say that in this deal with the courthouse, they're going to specifically cite her as clerk of the court and push her book. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I love what the lawyers, filing this said, which was basically, yeah, they ignored this because they already had a contract, so they weren't going to put up with her amending this. But oh my God. Jail. And like, is this just an area where like, is financial crime just a thing that happens out there? Like, I don't understand. Like, is this like the home of, the home of graft? Yeah. All right. Proof of service. Basically, we serve this. So filing fees, all of that. So that is the case. Holy, the audacity is just astounding. I feel like I have to take my hat off just as like a wow. I am impressed. I deal with criminal activity all the time, and I'm impressed that you had the courage to put that in writing. It wasn't a good idea. Like, I'm not impressed in the sense of like, this was a good idea. I'm impressed in the sense of like, somebody is driving a bus full of gas cans that is on fire into the Grand Canyon, and it's going to make a real big fireball when it lands. And I'm impressed somebody thought that they were going to do it. But, wow. Just wow. How does she try to make the claim that she's doing this on behalf of the people? Because she's an elected official, right? She's not, this isn't like, she's not operating a lemonade stand by the side of the road where you can say, "Oh, I'm doing this for my own benefit." She ran for public office. She's required to act in the benefit of the people, not herself. You're not supposed to use public office to enrich yourself personally. Again, there is a word for that, and that is corruption. And that's really what this looks like. I would love to hear an explanation for how this isn't, because, ooh, yeah, guys, if this ever feels like a good idea to you, like if you've ever been drinking enough that this seems like a good idea for how you could make a buck, you should take the bottle of whatever it is you're drinking and smack it against your head until sense manages to get in, or the stupid leaks out, whichever comes first. Oh my God. If I had a client who came in and this was their case, I'd be sitting there going, all right, let's talk about what you got to pay me, because it's going to be extra for the headache on this. This is going to, this is just, now, I said it before. I said at the beginning of this, like when I heard that they were like, we're doing a big press conference, we've got an appeal, I was like, sure you do, pat, right? Like, sure you do. Isn't that cute? And then I thought, I'm going to read their appeal and see what, maybe it'll be funny. I thought maybe their appeal will be funny on the basis that, I thought it'd be funny because I'd be able to mock Dick Poot and say, Dick Poot filed a stupid appeal, and let's all gather around and have a laugh at him because Dick Poot is inherently funny. I'm sorry, it is just, he is inherently funny because of his name, and his complete lack of gun safety is funny so long as you're nowhere near him. And, he's a bit bombastic. He's, whatever else. So I thought we'll have a laugh maybe at Dick Poot's expense, but I thought it would probably just be boring. I actually thought it would be, I thought it would just be like, oh yeah, we found, somebody's second cousin thinks they heard something at a bar. And I'd be going, this is not going to turn into anything. This is boring. Instead, this is like, this is a tire fire. This is like somebody, somebody goes and buys a metal detector and you think you're going to laugh at them because they're out there in the back of their cow field, metal detecting between the cow poops. And you think, this is hilarious. Like, this guy is so ridiculous. It's bizarre. And then suddenly the guy comes back into town and, has pirate treasure from somewhere. It's like, we didn't expect that. I just am now people are saying that the AD were both jurors. I gotta see. I'm gonna go reread the AD part because the A and D part, I want to reconfirm that. So, yeah, okay, juror 864 and 826 were in the single toilet unisex bathroom together. I guess that it could be that the jurors are A and D. That's less funny. But I'm still gonna, that notion's in my head. I'm sorry. I'm stuck with it. It's there. Yeah. I just don't know what to say. This is beyond the pale. This is the kind of thing where most lawyers can go an entire, like their entire career without ever seeing something so ridiculously messed up as this and are happy for it. Like, I can say I don't think I've ever had something this messed up, including like cases where I've been like, this. I have had cases that I've said, like, this is egregious, this is ridiculous, this is insane. And they weren't like, they were like 1/10 of this. 1/10 of this. So I'm just like, how? So if Dick Poot can land this, and what I mean by land this is basically if he can make it, like if he can get this evidence out and the court agrees that this is what happened, I think he gets his new trial. I think Murdaugh gets his new trial. Now, if Murdaugh has pled out already, and if Murdaugh has pled out to his financial crimes and is doing like 1 billion years in jail for stealing the money of everybody and their child and, you know, so forth, then he doesn't actually get released. But I would be okay, you know, if you're going to sit in custody, you'd still rather not have like 2 murders on your head, right? Especially if he's ever looking at like parole, which, I mean, I got to say, Murdaugh is old. I've seen the guy. I've unfortunately seen way too much of the guy. I'm not going to bring up the topless picture. You've either seen it and you don't need to see it again, or you haven't seen it and your life is blessed by not having seen Murdaugh topless. So that, you know, I don't think he's going to live long enough to get parole. I see people saying he's not that old. He's like 54. You know, 20 years is a long time to sit when you're 54. So I see people are saying he's trying to get to federal prison. That's exactly what he's trying to do. And if he can get the murders knocked out, he's much more likely to end up at like a federal low security prison. And if that happens, he'll be fairly comfortable as jail goes. I mean, jail is never great, but he might end up in a situation where he's in a minimum security federal prison and off he goes to Club Fed. He has a great time as prison goes. I mean, it's not going to be the life he lived beforehand, but it's still a nicer place than if he ends up in, ends up in some like medium or, whatever else. So we'll see. I think this is fascinating. I want to see how the court deals with this. I really hope they televise this, this proceeding, because oh my God, do I want to watch this? Even if I can't like do anything streaming about it or anything like that, I just want to watch this. And Katie says, calling him old is basically calling me old. I'm 53 and I'm not old, nor am I going to die in prison. Old is relative. in the sense of, if you're looking at a 20-year bit, you basically have to take your current age plus 20 years of hard living, like 20 years of rough living, because prison often ages you a lot more than you would think. So see, I watched the press conference that Putin Griffin gave today. I believe these are allegations that may or may not be true, and that is correct. They are allegations. They haven't been proven in court at this point. Putin admitted that they tracked, hunted, in my opinion, the jurors down. Good for them. I got to say that if they tracked the jurors down and got this information, and that it might be thrown out like the whole verdict, good for them. That is excellent defense lawyering. That is what they should be doing. It's like, sorry, that's representing your client. And if you were convicted on the basis of this same stuff, you would want your lawyers to do the same. 100% you would want your lawyers to do the same. So yeah, and as I've mentioned a number of times, all of this is just this is the allegations at this point. There is some sworn testimony in there, and that sworn testimony is evidence. Now, what the evidence, like what the value of that evidence is going to vary. I suspect that the hearsay is going to be tossed. I suspect the hearsay is not going to go anywhere. But the first party affidavit is going to be a lot harder to reject. A lot harder to reject. So, yeah. Let's look at some super chats here, because I am just I've moved on to the scotch. If I keep drinking the scotch at the same rate I was drinking the beer there, I would be astounded. I see the jurors were mad over a book that at least one approach Poot. That was sort of the impression I got from the press conference, was that somebody approached Poot and then they went and investigated from there. I don't know. I want to see what happens on all of this one. And yeah, Kurt makes a good point here. Uncivil Law. Check out his channel if you haven't already, by the way. He does great coverage and fantastic analysis on like Supreme Court decisions and so forth. Hearsay might be good enough to get to the hearing. And at this point, that's enough. That's the thing, is if they get to this hearing, I could see them pulling every juror to ask them these questions. And I mean, ultimately, this doesn't necessarily mean Murdaugh gets acquitted, because if he gets a new trial, I think the prosecution is going to be keen enough to run a new trial. They haven't shown any signs that they're going to be like, we've already got him in jail forever. They haven't shown any signs they're going to give up on that. Instead, what they've said is like, we're going after this guy no matter what. So, let's say they get their new trial. They're going to run another trial. And it's going to be hard for Murdaugh to testify again, because they've already got his testimony at the first trial and they can impeach him with that. So, yeah. Isn't the bottom of this that if he gets the verdict thrown out, he can then sue and get his hands on tons of money? This is all about the money. Dick wants paid. Alex wants money to pay off people. I don't think he can get much money out of this. He might be able to sue, Becky Hill if this is made out. But Becky Hill I don't think she's got a lot of money. I just don't think there's likely to be a whole lot of money out there. And one of the problems of lawsuits is you can sue somebody and get like $1 million judgment. And ultimately that $1 million judgment might be worth no money. I've seen people walk away from cases with like, I have millions of dollars of, the court says I get millions of dollars. And it's like, tough. Like there's no millions of dollars. So Oh, and I see we've got Natalie in the chat. Natalie, we've got to do something again because it has been way too long. Maybe I'll have you on a Monday stream there. Yeah, I'm blown away by this. Natalie also does criminal defense. Have you ever seen anything like this in a criminal file, Natalie? I just don't. I can't. Like, I would never have predicted this outcome. Never in a million years. Just never. I would have actually, if you'd asked me to put a bet on this, I would have put a bet higher on one juror murders another juror after the trial than on this. Like, just in terms of sheer odds. And that's like long odds. So, and Natalie, Natalie's channel is great. Natalie Lawyer Chick. Check out her channel. I understand she was doing coverage on the 8 passengers case, which I don't know a whole lot about. But I would love to. I'm going to watch that and try to learn some more. So, and this is a great question here. Can they go after other cases? Becky Hill was a clerk during interview different juries, etc. If I was a defense lawyer in that area, I can tell you I might be trying to talk to juries and being like, I need to go and find out if my jury has anything to say about this. And this could, this might be a one-off, right? This might be something, or it might be BS, right? Like, it might be that this all falls apart, but if it's substantiated, it might be a one-off, like something that's just happened once. Or it might be something that's happened more than once, because sometimes when you find these things, they happen more than once. There have been cases of like drug examiners, for instance, who steal drugs and then just say, yeah, here's what the results were. Oh, and we got Rob here. This motion and apparent receipts is about as wild and, if true, stupid as I've ever seen. Caveat, I've never seen something like this. Wild. What a surprise after some time offline. Yeah. Rob, I hope you're ready to go on Friday, because we miss Friday Night Frenzy. But this is crazy. And not that long ago, I was reading a case where this woman faked live testimony. She actually had somebody, like a hired witness, to like testify on Zoom court, and was just a complete fake witness. And that's not as wild as this. I've got a case I want to cover soon that is a case where 4 lawyers died in the course of this case. And it's not as wild as this. Nobody's really as interested in 4 lawyers dying because they're lawyers, but this is still just like, how? How? And the other thing is, some people have said, what if this is all made up? And I guess let's answer that question. What if this turns out to be complete bullshit? Well, if this turns out to be complete bullshit, then whoever swore that affidavit is going to be in trouble. And Dick Poot and various others, Griffin, would all be in trouble. I don't think this is made up. And the reason why I say that is because Dick Poot would get disbarred for engineering something like this if he did. And so, as much as Dick Poot would like to win this case, he doesn't want to stop being a lawyer over it. I always tell junior lawyers, I say, listen, at the end of the day, so long as you haven't screwed up too badly, you walk out the door at the back of the court, at the front of the courtroom instead of the door at the back. I.e., if you don't screw up too badly, you keep your job, you continue being a lawyer, and you don't go to jail. I don't think Poot would be willing to go to, to lose his career over this. I just don't see it. Right now, Poot is actually hoping this is going to launch his career. I mean, he's already got a pretty great career, but he's already he's hoping to make it sort of explode, right? To get more reputation, more whatever. I see. Is Poot a pseudonym? His last name is Richard Harpootlian, and apparently he goes by Poot, and his name is Richard. So I call him Dick Poot because, yeah. Yeah, and this is it. This is too weird to have been made up. If you were going to make something up, you'd probably make up like 10% of this. Because this is way too much if you're making it up, right? You don't need this much to get a new trial. You don't need this level of fuckery. He could have gotten a new trial. Like if he was just making this up, he could have gotten that with so much less stuff. This feels true to me. It feels bizarre, weird, crazy, like lunatic, but it feels like it probably happened. And if it didn't, I'm going to be shocked. I'm going to be surprised if we find out. I really, really hope they televise this proceeding. Really, really hope. Because I want to see what happens. I want to see it so bad. It's also interesting that the least interesting part of this whole story is Becky Hill's book. Becky Hill's book sucks. For all the people who wanted me to like do a reading of Becky Hill's book, the little bit of Becky Hill's book that we saw here has been enough to convince me that I just cannot survive reading it. I will like go and drown myself in like a puddle in the backyard. And, I've got dogs, so that's not a pleasant puddle. I feel sorry for whatever junior lawyer has to read this book to mine it for evidence. Because some junior lawyer has been assigned the task of go through this book and find every little scrap we can use against her. And whoever you are, sir or madam, we salute you for your sacrifices. Write the effing book. Why? In the same year as the conviction. What on the actual F? I've never heard of a court clerk writing a book about a trial that just happened either. Like I've always said, stupidity should hurt. The problem is that this level of stupid hurts the wrong people. It's hurting me. And I wasn't the one who did the stupid. It should be hurting. Like, why? Oh, man. Yeah. Just when you thought Chad Daybell's book was the worst. What is with this year and like crime books? Because we've got Chad Daybell. We've got this. We've got, what's her name? Corey Richins with her book. I'm just going to say, don't write a book if you are remotely near crime. Like, don't. If your spouse dies under mysterious circumstances, the last thing you should be doing is writing a book about a spouse dying under mysterious circumstances and how it could have happened, where the body is buried. Like, I feel like this is yeah. Kurt, why did you buy the book? Why did you buy the book? Oh my god. I see people saying tell it to OJ. OJ is not a smart man. OJ probably took a few concussions in his years. And that's why the book. Like, yeah. Yeah, and don't title it If I Did It. Um, all right, we got Alpaca saying, please donate to your nearest alpaca farm. Yeah, that's Corey Richens. Somebody says bathroom reader. I feel like this would be a great bathroom book if it's printed on like 3-ply. But I feel like it's not printed on 3-ply. All right. Let's look at some super chats here and then wind up. Equality, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Rachel Dueck, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Wesley Hoke, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. I'm being reminded that I need to remind you guys to like this stream, and it really does help. So like the stream, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. It's Corey Richens, but from a government official. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and here's the point. At least OJ wrote it after he was acquitted. And, once you're acquitted, they can't recharge him. So at that point, he's good to go. Kim Silvio says, thank you for the membership gift, Sandy. I hope Sandy's still in the chat because thank you, Sandy. Andrew J., assuming these allegations are true, I have to wonder if Ms. Hill tampered with any other trials. I think that there's going to be a lot of lawyers asking that question right now. Ian Kinzel says, could any of the jurors be liable for cooperating with Hill? I don't know, because it really depends on how they cooperated. Like, if we hear that a juror conspired with Hill to taint the verdict in some fashion, then yeah. But we don't know that at this point. There's no allegation of that. There's just allegations of mysterious conversations that may or may not be whatever. So, yeah. Thank you for your analysis this, Ian. Had confidence you would present it well and spicily. This one just hurts me. The spice must flow because I can't. Yeah. What do you think other attorneys who had cases in front of her are going to do? What would you do if this happened in a court you had cases, convictions in? I would start trying to find jurors. I would start trying to, I'd be hiring private investigators and just being like, let's talk. I would like to find out, what happened. So yeah, that I think is, I think that's going to be important. And it could be that, if another lawyer can get another filing like this going with affidavits from the jurors and so forth, then at that point, this is huge, because they'll basically have to start unwinding and looking at every trial she's been in. And, this could be one of those situations like when they find an bad expert witness, and they end up having to let 40 people out of jail. Oh, yeah. This Hill had eyes and questionable motives. Yes, I love. Just Ginge. That is a great turn of phrase. You win for the day. Disney Mom says, Law and Lumber. Let's put it this way: Runkle's reading a bit from it, and people were offering him money to stop. Yeah, the book is. The author excitedly describes her lunch of pizza and cheesecake in New York. Oh, and it was her first time on an airplane. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, if somebody's telling me about their first time on an airplane, I will listen to it if it's a family member. But if you're just some random person telling me about the first time on an airplane, I'm sitting there and maybe smiling and nodding, and mentally I'm trying not to die of like I don't want to hear this anymore. So yeah. But what did Becky Hill did Becky Hill dictate her book from jail? She hasn't been there yet. She might. Froggy Hill question. Sorry if this was covered already, but do you think this was planned by Murdaugh and his lawyers? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me with all the corruption. I don't think that Murdaugh planned this. You'd plan to win the trial if you were engaged in shenanigans. The issue remains. Her name as a juror got out. Yeah, fair enough. Please depose Satan. That would be a great trial to watch. People have tried. People have tried to sue Satan. It doesn't go well. It does not go well. Jillian Whelan, same name thing. I had a nurse go nuts at outpatient's appointment about nothing being in my chart as to why I needed to be seen. I replied standing on crutches after 2 ankle surgeries. So is my leg not broke anymore? If only. I'm guessing that was somebody else with the same name. So, yeah. Not Newman's regular court, so not his normal clerk. Oh, didn't know that. Bop it. There are places in the rural South where they make up their own rules, and the law is just an inconvenience. I feel like that is the case here. Kristen M96, does this mean if there's a new trial, you will come to South Carolina? Maybe. I can't make any promises, but I am kind of tempted. So, yeah. Lynn Britton, all the spicy words for this one. Well, thank you. And, yeah. Law and Lumber says this motion and apparent receipts is about as wild and if true stupid as I've ever seen. Caveat, I've never seen anything like this or something like this. Wild. What a surprise after some time offline. Yeah, I feel like this one's going to get, assuming that Friday Night Frenzy runs, I assume we're still going to be talking about it then. Whoops. I think Ms. Hill got her self-destruct and gained fame buttons confused. A lot of people do. Jennifer McCauley says this will hurt in the worst way. Yep. Celebrial 82 says this is just insane. Yep. It's absolutely crazy. Randomizer 1666 says happy early birthday to Amber on Thursday. We could get her a big brown cake. Brown swirl cake. Assuming that's the Amber I'm thinking of. Kathy says, Ian and Rob, you must organize a cruise in the Caribbean. They're affordable, and I bet we could fill the whole ship. I am curious about that, but I don't know if I'm capable of planning it. I got to talk about some people on that, and yeah, we'll just have to we'll have to see. I like the idea. However, Against the Tide, who is a longtime mod for me, fantastic, doesn't really like water. So I am thinking that we could maybe do something on land, because I would like for I'd like for Against the Tide to be there. So, yeah. All right. We could, rather than like a Law Tube cruise, we could do like a Law Tube Vegas night or something like that. So that might be an idea. So Against the Tide says, don't forget to like the stream. You heard her. And Kristen M96 says, different Amber, fun chat Amber. I am sorry, Amber. I did not mean to make I didn't realize, or I wouldn't have made the comparison, because yes, nobody needs to have that comparison. So I don't know. Now I don't gamble, so I don't know if Vegas is really the place there. And Jen, thank you for 5 gifted memberships. Law and Lumber, thank you for 10 gifted memberships. And an announcement from Rob saying, people asking, you can disclose. Partner at Whitbeck Bennett began today. Fun, scary, exciting change. So if you don't know, Rob has, he moved firms. He is now a partner at Whitbeck Bennett. I don't know them because they're in Virginia, so that's a long way away from me. But it is a big change. He's now He's now a partner at a firm. He's got people under him who can help him run bigger files. This is a big advancement. It's a big, it's a big move to bigger and better things. Rob is a fantastic lawyer. I've seen his thinking and that sort of thing. I think he's destined for really big, great things, and I want to see him succeed. And I think that this is an important step on that. He was nervous making the jump because every time you make a big change, you're nervous. But I am wishing him all the best on this one because I think it's fantastic. So, congratulations, Rob. You earned it, and I'll be cheering you on. At some point, we've got to meet up and have a proper celebration. So, all right. Somebody says I promised a fun Potter story. I'll tell you a fun Zora story. Zora, we put her in the puppy kennel, like the puppy prison, because we were away for the weekend. And so when she was put in the puppy prison, the kennel, my wife, who was dropping her off, said, "Be careful. She is going to try to escape, and she opens doors." And they said, "That's fine. You're like, she's not going to be able to open these doors. There's 2 doors in between here, and she's not going to be able to get through." So, and then Zora comes trotting out, and Zora is like, "I'm coming with you." And they're like, "How did she get out?" It's like, she can open doors. That's how she got out. So Zora was still there when we got back, so that was a good thing. And I see Rob saying, "Chat is amazing. Ian, you're amazing. Thank you all for the amazing love and support." Man, we got nothing but support for you here. People were also asking about Potter's Day. So somebody came into my backyard today, and Potter wanted to go out in the backyard. And so Potter went out and then immediately came back in because Potter did not like seeing that there was somebody unknown in the backyard. And then I went out and I had a brief conversation with the person in the backyard, which I will be very vague about details on. But during the course of this very brief conversation, this person agreed that it was best that they maybe find another yard to explore. I'm not going to specify any further about how this conversation went or what it was or how it was about. So, Potter was weirded out. So Potter spent the rest of the day wanting to go inside and outside and outside and inside and so forth. And here's the thing about Potter. Potter has learned an important, valuable life skill from the smoke detector. And what I mean by the smoke detector is that, so at one point, Mrs. Runkle and I, we let the battery run down in the smoke detector, and it was doing that beep thing where it goes beep every 30, 45 seconds and annoys the piss out of you. So, that annoyed the piss out of us. But Potter learned a valuable lesson, which is if he makes a noise just like that, it will annoy us, and then we can, it can accomplish things. So Potter has learned that the appropriate way to get us to do things is to go, burp, and he'll make this really high-pitched, very, very short beep, like very, very short bark. He goes, burp, and then he'll wait like 45 seconds, and he'll go, burp, and wait another 45 seconds, and burp, over and over and over again. And he'll literally do it for like an hour if you don't let him out. He's just like, oh my God. He learned this from the smoke alarm. It is the most annoying thing. And it's like, this dog is way too smart for our own good. because yeah, he just annoys the crap out of us with that. But I mean, he still it gets him what he wants eventually. Um, Zora, on the other hand, she just tries to open the door herself. So and I see people saying that their dog is reacting. I'm sorry to everyone whose dog has just learned this trick, but Potter was getting on my nerves all day because he was doing that to either go in or out or out or in. And oh my God. So Ruckle the Bailey, honest question. When you saw press rumblings, did you expect anything like this? RE level of receipts. When I saw the press comments about Dick Harpootlian has a press conference to announce he's making a motion for a new trial, I was like, this is going to be some weak sauce bullshit that they're just throwing like spaghetti at the wall, hoping something will stick. It'll be something like, somebody's third cousin heard somebody in a bar say something that might vaguely, about how a juror had a headache one day. Right. And it'll be, I thought it was going to be something sketchy as hell like that. I didn't think I'd even cover it. Like I went and got a hold of these filings and went, holy shit. Like it just blew my mind when I saw what was actually in them, because I did not expect anything that was actually like of substance. And I thought maybe they might do something like, hey, we're making a bunch of wild allegations about the jury, but we've got nothing to back it up. Like that thing with Amber, where they're like, this juror was not a real juror, and they had nothing to back it up, and it was complete like dog shit. I thought we were going to see something like that. I could mock, Dick Poot and compare him to Elaine. That's what I thought we were looking at. And instead I was like, oh my God. Yeah. The only way this can get any better is if the court clerk has ties to SLED. Kurt, stop. I can only there's limits as to how much I could, grin over that. Yeah, I if they can tie this concretely to SLED, oh man, that should end some careers. I mean, it won't because they're cops, but it should. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it would just be astounding. All right, I'm going to wrap this up because I feel like we have... I feel like if I go over this anymore, I'm going to have an aneurysm, and that's probably a bad idea. I cannot wait to see what happens. And yeah, there's this as well. One of the jurors' brothers was one of the cops that testified. I wonder if he's one of the cops that, or one of the jurors that's tied to all of this. I just don't know. Is Rob coming up on your panel tonight? This is just a me, yammering show. I wasn't expecting Rob to be here because Rob's had a busy day. But Friday, Rob's going to have Friday Night Frenzy, I hope. I can't speak for him because, stuff happens. But if he does, I'll be there, and we will probably talk about this one and just be like, what the heck? All right. I am not going to embiggen myself because we've had those audio sync problems, but I am going to run the outro here and see you all next time.